Chapter 640. This was a Kuan, a giant Kuan. Furthermore, unlike the species he had seen above the demon world's holy palace before, this was a scavenger Kuan with an extremely foul stench all over its body, like a rotting corpse soaked in stinky mud. The smell was extremely pungent. This could already be called a biochemical weapon. Frowning, Immortal Zhenyuan used spirit energy to seal off his nose to temporarily numb his sense of smell, otherwise he felt that he really would pass out from the stench. If this was the case for a grand venerated immortal, then there was no need to mention other people. The current situation was almost exactly the same as what second-generation demon saint had described back then. An inexplicable crack in space, and then a primordial ferocious beast that used primordial chi as its main source of energy. So the question at hand was, where did this ferocious beast come from? How annoying. I'm afraid I'll have to mend the ground again after I've already patched it up. Immortal Zhenyuan sighed in his heart. He clenched his fists and completely concealed his aura, concealing himself in a way that would disguise himself first. This scavenger Kuan wasn't big, but it was still a little bigger than the corpse he had seen in Demon Saint's holy palace back then. It wasn't a baby Kuan, but a child Kuan whose spiritual intelligence hadn't fully developed yet. Although the other party had already sensed his aura, as long as Immortal Zhenyuan didn't alert it, he probably wouldn't provoke it. Even so, this scavenger Kuan's senses were beyond Immortal Zhenyuan's imagination. Even though Immortal Zhenyuan had concealed his aura, this scavenger Kuan actually didn't seem to lose its direction. Immortal Zhenyuan changed his position several times in a row, and the scavenger Kuan also followed suit, its head always aimed in his direction. Was this Kuan using its head as a sensing device? Or, was someone controlling this scavenger Kuan's movements from behind the scenes? Immortal Zhenyuan remembered that in Demon Saint's holy palace, there had been a broken fishing line on the belly of that baby multi-fanged Kuan. If this fishing line could be used to conduct and control the Kuan like a marionette, then the current situation was a lot more complicated than Immortal Zhenyuan had imagined. Immortal puppet. Open. Thinking this, Immortal Zhenyuan didn't hesitate to open his immortal eye. Light gathered in his orange pupils before finally blossoming. In that instant, it was as if time had slowed down and everything in the world had slowed down. With Immortal Zhenyuan at its center, a faint immortal chi spread out, causing his beautiful red hair to sway slightly. The immortal puppet's power searched the scavenger Kuan's body from top to bottom. Soon, his eyes trembled. Blade, come. Immortal Zhenyuan raised his hand, and several streaks of red light swiftly flew out of his cuffs. He had never taken out his life-bonded magic weapon before because he didn't think it was necessary. But now, in the face of such a ferocious prehistoric vicious beast, Immortal Zhenyuan wouldn't hold anything back, because the slightest carelessness could really endanger his life. These streaks of red light formed a disc in front of Immortal Zhenyuan, and finally joined together to form a blade wheel with 8 openings. When a cultivator reached a certain realm, they would have their own life-bonded magic weapon, which was usually a first-class holy weapon or a world-defying magic weapon. The red blade wheel that Immortal Zhenyuan had summoned now was a world-defying magic weapon that had been forged after being fed with his own blood for 100 years, Red Moon Blade Wheel. Red Moon Blade Wheel had 2 forms. When split, it could be used independently as an 8-sided scimitar for all kinds of miraculous attacks, which was more flexible. The second form, which was the wheel attack in its current combined form, was even more destructive. Currently, Immortal Zhenyuan didn't know what kind of material this fishing line was made of, but what was certain was that this fishing line could actually penetrate space and wasn't corroded by the power of chaos in the space. Attacking purely in its first form, it definitely wouldn't be able to cut the fishing line. Red Moon Blade Wheel was extremely destructive. When all was said and done, it was a world-defying magic weapon. As it flew over, its powerful blade cut through the air and distorted space. The pressure from Red Moon Blade Wheel was so strong that the ground couldn't withstand it and started to crack. Zhenyuan's heart was bleeding. This was the ground he had just restored. But in this situation, he had to sacrifice the child to catch the wolf. If he didn't stop this scavenger Kuan, it would definitely cause even more serious damage to Drought Star. Clang! Red Moon blade will collided with the fishing line, and there was the dull sound of metal striking metal. Immortal Jin Yuan could faintly see sparks from the friction between the blade wheel and the fishing line. I have to work harder. Immortal Jin Yuan's fiery red Daoist robe flapped in the air as he manipulated Red Moon blade wheel to spin at high speed. The powerful blade scraped against this fishing line of unknown material, and there was an ear-piercing sound. Since Wind Spirit's disappearance, Immortal Jin Yuan had never used his strength like this before. He did his best to make Red Moon blade will spin at its fastest speed. It should work, Immortal Jin Yuan furrowed his brow. At the same time, the scavenger Kuan on the ground shrieked as the Red Moon blade disc spun. It was as if the fishing line was connected to its nerves. When the fishing line collided with the Red Moon blade disc, the scavenger Kuan sank into madness and looked to be in extreme pain. Very soon, there was a crisp sound. It was the sound of the fishing line snapping. Success. Immortal Jin Yuan was delighted. But the moment the fishing line snapped, the scavenger Kuan started to uncontrollably spit out purple-black rotting liquid onto the ground. Fortunately, this was just a child Kuan and wasn't very big, it was only a dozen or so meters long. If it had been an adult giant Kuan, its wingspan would have been more than 10,000 feet, and Immortal Jin Yuan felt that it would have been very difficult for him to withstand such a vicious creature. Immortal Jin Yuan wasn't in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he carefully observed the Kuan in the air for a while, and finally concluded that this scavenger Kuan spitting out rotting liquid was a stress reaction to the fishing line snapping, like a person vomiting carsick. After the line on its back was cut, this child Kuan looked much less ferocious, and its perception wasn't as strong as it had been when it had first appeared. Now that Immortal Jin Yuan was a little stealthy, the other party was already unable to detect him. It seemed that baby Kuan and child Kuan indeed didn't have the ability to attack on their own. Immortal Jin Yuan had been wondering this when he had seen the baby multi-fanged Kuan in Demon Saint's holy palace, but now it seemed that he had an explanation. Whether it was a baby Kuan or a child Kuan, although they had the ability to attack, these prehistoric vicious beasts generally wouldn't take the initiative to attack at this stage. Vicious beasts learned their attack skills from their parents as they grew older. At this stage, they still needed enough nutrients to grow, and attacking would usually affect their development. Chapter 641. After spitting out the acid, the scavenger Kuan gradually calmed down. The puppet technique was an evil technique that was absolutely forbidden among human cultivators. This was because the principle behind the puppet technique was very malicious. What it consumed wasn't the energy of the caster, but the energy of the victim. The victim of the puppet technique would continuously produce energy at the cost of their lifespan until they ran dry. Thousands of years ago, when this spell had just become popular, the victims would eventually be completely drained of their energy by the caster before they slowly withered away and died. But the caster would be completely unscathed. Immortal Jin Yuan wasn't sure whether the puppet spell was controlling this scavenger Kuan's movements, but he was sure that the principle behind this spell was similar to the puppet spell. While Immortal Jin Yuan was pondering this, a golden light suddenly appeared in the sky, and Loopy Toad and Little Silver descended abruptly, both wrapped in the golden light shield that Wang Ling had cast on them. After Dog 2's trip to the demon world last time, Wang Ling had reconfigured Lord Ma. From now on, everyone who was teleported through Lord Ma would have their own golden light shield on them, except for those who had been washed away by Lord Ma. Loopy Toad and Little Silver landed in front of the giant scavenger Kuan's corpse. "Senior Dog. Why are you here?" Immortal Jin Yuan was pleasantly surprised. Dog 2 stared at the scavenger Kuan, which looked like it had already fallen asleep on the ground, and its heart was also shaken. In the end, it was still a step too late. But Jin Yuan didn't seem to be in any serious trouble, so the situation wasn't too bad. "I predicted that the angler might make a move on you, so I decided to come and take a look. Loopy Toad nodded and suppressed the shock in its heart as it put on an expression as if it knew everything. Also, I specially made a weapon for you. After saying that, Loopy Toad raised the corner of its eye and motioned for Little Silver to hand over the 3-view-shattering hammer. Everything had been said and done beforehand. When Little Silver handed over the hammer, he looked Immortal Genuine up and down with a very strange expression. Was this Immortal Genuine, a legendary human cultivator in the world today? Little Silver didn't think this red-haired young man in front of him was very powerful. In any case, he was definitely far inferior to Master. Otherwise, how could he not even be able to tell that this dog too next to him was pretending to be a senior? Senior dog, who is this lovely girl? Immortal Genuine looked at Little Silver. Little Silver, but face replied, he's my servant. I'm used to taking him out for a walk. It just so happened that I happened to meet him today, so I brought him along for a walk. Little Silver, but face asked, did you see the collar around his neck? Little Silver, holy shit. He had actually dug his own grave. I see. Immortal Genuine had a look of sudden realization on his face. He had thought it was a little strange that this girl had a collar around her neck, but after Dog 2's explanation, Immortal Genuine completely understood. Immortal Genuine scratched the back of his head and couldn't help praising it. As expected of Senior Dog. I've always seen people walk their dogs, but this is the first time I've seen a dog walk a person. Although it was his first time, Genuine didn't find it strange at all. In the cultivation world, strength was always king. Cultivators would choose to rear spirit beasts as pets, but there was no rule stating that some powerful spirit beasts could not sign some labor contracts to hire cultivators. It was very normal for a senior with Senior Dog's realm to have a few human servants, okay? Although Genuine felt that the aura of this fair-faced girl in front of him didn't smell like that of a human, let alone a spirit beast, but Genuine didn't dare ask too many questions. After all, this was their first time meeting, and in front of Senior Dog at that, asking too many questions would be a little rude. Has it stopped? Loopy Toad looked at the behemoth in front of it and asked about the situation. Yes, Senior Dog. This space fissure formed not long ago, and I only noticed it when I was about to mend it. Originally, he wanted to block the crack, and then this ferocious creature would come out from inside. It was the same as when I went to Demon Saint's holy palace last time. There was a fishing line in this creature's belly, and I cut it off with my life-bonded magic weapon, Red Moon Blade Disc, Immortal Genuine said in full detail. As he spoke, a reddish-gold blade disc the size of a millstone slowly spun behind him. This was Loopy Toad's first time seeing Immortal Genuine's life-bonded magic weapon. In fact, this millstone-sized Red Moon Blade disc was just a miniature version, and Immortal Genuine's life-bonded magic weapon could freely shrink or shrink. Is there a severed line? Little Silver was very curious. Part of it is still attached to that evil creature's body, and the rest has already been swallowed up by the space fissure. It should have been recycled. I think it's a puppet spell, but I don't think so. If it's just a simple puppet spell, it would be a little difficult to control such a behemoth. Immortal Genuine cupped his chin and looked at Loopy Toad. Does Senior Dog know what spell this is? Loopy Toad pretended to be profound. Of course I know. On the side, Little Silver looked like he was watching a good show. Dog 2's act had gone overboard, and Little Silver wanted to see what it had to say. Loopy Toad, I know, but there's no need to say it in person. My servant, Little Silver, will handle this matter. Little Silver. F***ku. Teacher Little Silver, what do you think? Immortal Genuine asked very cautiously, and even used honorifics. Although this Miss Little Silver was indeed Senior Dog's servant, what was Senior Dog's identity? Even if Miss Little Silver was a servant, her identity wasn't something he could touch. That was because holy beasts and vicious beasts were inseparable enemies to begin with. Although Little Silver hadn't had much contact with vicious beasts, he had come into contact with them at a very young age. That was before holy beasts had gone extinct and before Dog Saint had been made into a hot pot. Everything had been pretty wonderful. Little Silver frowned as he looked at the scavenger Kuin, which seemed to have already fallen asleep. Was it a puppet spell? That shouldn't be possible. The puppet spell usually controlled targets that weren't too big. Thousands of years ago, people who had mastered this spell knew how to apply the 100 puppets demonstration technique, which meant that they could control over 100 puppets at the same time. But in the end, these puppets were very small. It would be very difficult to control such a huge vicious beast with the puppet spell alone. It's the puppet goose spell. Little Silver suddenly raised his head and said. Chapter 642. It's not the puppet spell, it's the puppet goose spell. Realization dawned on Immortal Genuine's face, and his admiration for Senior Dog instantly rose again. The ground began to roll up and down like the billowing waves. In the end, this was Senior Dog. Even a servant under him could instantly see through the trick. Why hadn't he thought of it? Indeed, if it was the puppet goose spell, which was even more sinister than the puppet spell, controlling such a vicious creature would no longer be nonsense. The puppet voodoo technique was a technique that was based on the puppet voodoo technique and enhanced by the voodoo technique. Unlike the puppet spell, which used strings and spells to control puppets, the puppet goose spell required a goo to be planted in the body of the person under the spell, and the power of the goo poison combined with the strings and spells to strengthen the entire puppet spell. To control such an enormous vicious creature, the goo insect inside its body had to be terrifyingly large. Immortal Genuine opened his immortal eye, and a beam of spirit light shot out to penetrate the surface of the scavenger Kuin's skin to see inside its body. But very quickly, he withdrew his immortal eye. This method didn't work. Like the baby multifanged Kuin, this scavenger Kuin's main energy source was primordial chi. Since the primordial chi covered its body, the immortal eye, which used spirit energy as its main energy source, couldn't penetrate the Kuin's skin at all. As expected, it doesn't work. Immortal Genuine sighed. The concentration of primordial chi in his body was still too low. Little Silver licked his lips. Should I cut it open and take a look? Immortal Genuine suddenly felt that this Miss Little Silver was a little scary. Cut it open, how could it be so easy? He had used Red Moon Blade Disc to cut the fishing line on the back of this vicious creature, and part of the disc's blade had scraped the surface of the scavenger Kuin's skin, but this seemingly soft skin was actually so hard that it couldn't be broken. His Red Moon Blade Disc was a world-defying magic weapon. It wasn't a high-level world-defying magic weapon, and had just reached 8th class. However, an 8th grade world-defying celestial device, which was also his natal magic weapon, could definitely destroy the celestial body of a genuine immortal in terms of the damage it could inflict on the celestial body. However, even such a magical artifact could do nothing against this primordial vicious beast. This monster is not moving now. Let's find a way to block the crack first. Immortal Genuine frowned slightly. Worried that something unforeseen might happen, he wanted to be the first to block that unusual space fissure. However, just as he was about to make a move, an extremely ferocious pressure came from the spatial rift. Senior Dog. Something else is coming out. Immortal Genuine had a bad feeling in his heart. Loopy Toad and Little Silver were on guard at the same time. Because of the protective golden light around them, this pressure had a limited effect on them. But just by looking at the momentum, they knew that this fissure was probably going to spit out something incredible again. The baby multifanged Kuin in the Demon Saint's holy palace, and the scavenger Kuin in front of him, what would it be this time? At this moment, a strand of tension lingered in the surroundings. It's a big guy this time. Little Silver scared. Although the monster in the crack hadn't come out yet, he could already sense that it wasn't simple. This kind of pressure probably didn't belong to an adult prehistoric vicious beast. "Let's try this hammer," Loopy Toad reminded them at that moment. They weren't flustered at all. After all, with the hammer that little Masterling had just personally forged in front of them, if they really ran into an opponent they couldn't handle, they could settle it with one blow. It was impossible to make a move. How could they beat this kind of monster? As Little Silver had guessed, it was a big guy this time. The space fissure tore open visibly and became wider than before. Then, a scavenger Kuin that reeked of decay and was even bigger than the child scavenger Kuin in front of them flew out of the fissure. This scavenger Kuin was more than 10 times the size of the one on the ground. It flew out of the fissure like an aircraft carrier, and its huge shadow directly covered Loopy Toad's astonished face. Furthermore, this was just the upper half of its body, the other half was still in the space fissure. This thing was way too big. Immortal Jinyuan was greatly alarmed. It really is an adult scavenger Kuin, but this size means that it has just reached adulthood. A real adult scavenger Kuin is even bigger. Little Silver's expression was as calm as an ancient well. Although this vicious beast was big, it didn't scare him at all. Back then, Dog Saint's double sizing had been even bigger. If it wasn't for those cultivators carelessly drugging Dog Saint, making him unable to use double sizing and turning him into a spicy hot pot stew, the Holy Dog clan wouldn't have been completely wiped out. Immortal Jinyuan, Loopy Toad and Little Silver scattered on the spot and retreated a little. To their surprise, this adult scavenger Kuin didn't seem to have any intention of attacking. Instead, it directly opened its mouth wide and made a swallowing motion at the child scavenger Kuin on the ground. It looks like the angler wants to use this adult scavenger Kuin to swallow the child scavenger Kuin on the ground and take it back. Immortal Jinyuan figured out the intention of the person behind the scenes. "Since that's the case, we can't let him succeed," Loopy Toad said with a frown. The angler's action of choosing to take it back rather than attack was enough to prove that there was a secret inside the child scavenger Kuin on the ground that the angler didn't want them to know. As for what secret this child scavenger Kuin was hiding, they would only find out after it was cut open. "Senior, don't do anything, leave it to me." After saying that, Immortal Jinyuan was the first to rush forward. Loopy Toad, all right. Red Moon Blade Disc's attack had already been quite weak against the child scavenger Kuin, and it was clear that it was almost impossible to cause any damage to this adult scavenger Kuin. All of his hopes rested on that little hammer. Immortal Jinyuan gripped the hammer tightly. He had never seen this hammer before and it didn't look very impressive. But since this hammer had been made by Senior Dog, it should be effective, right? While Immortal Jinyuan was thinking this, he raised the pitch-black hammer and directly swung it down at the adult scavenger Kuin. Bang! There was the muffled sound of a collision. Immortal Jinyuan was thrown back, but he wasn't injured. The moment he was thrown back, the adult scavenger Kuin which had been hit by the hammer suddenly roared in pain, and its swallowing motion instantly froze. The weakening effect had taken effect. Now is the time for all living things to be equal. Hurry up and attack. Dog 2 reminded him. All right. Senior. Immortal Jinyuan grit his teeth and operated Red Moon Blade Disc again. Chapter 643. Red Moon Blade Disc was like a gear, and as Immortal Jinyuan cast the spell, it grew in size as it moved, its blade piercing through the heavens. When a world-defying magic weapon truly unleashed its power, it undoubtedly had earth-shattering destructive power. Red Moon Blade Disc cut into the weakened body of the adult scavenger Kuin inch by inch, causing massive amounts of blood to gush out of the wound. The corrosive blood flowed out very slowly like magma, and the moment it touched the ground, it corroded into the earth and burned up thick smoke. Loopy Toad and Little Silver sealed their nose orifices. The smell was too horrible, and if they didn't cut off their sense of smell, they would probably die here. It really works. Immortal Jinyuan was delighted in his heart. This hammer was too useful. In the end, it was Senior Dog who could actually create such a powerful limited-use magic weapon. It could only be used 10 times in total, so he had to use it sparingly. The adult scavenger Kun let out a pained cry, and the mysterious angler on the other end of the crack seemed to sense something. Under the angler's control, the upper body of the adult scavenger Kun, which had just poked out of the crack, actually started to shrink back. Want to leave? Not so easy. Jinyuan grit his teeth and operated Red Moon Blade Disc with all his might. In a flash, the disc expanded by several hundred inches and directly cut off the upper body of the adult scavenger Kun along with the fishing line on it. Mend. The moment the scavenger Kun's body fell, Immortal Jinyuan directly used the Heart Demon Stone as an energy source to directly extract primordial chi from it and used the Skymen Stone to plug the crack. The Skymen Stone was a synthetic cultivation industrial material used to repair space cracks. It was very expensive, but it was very effective in mending space. But the moment Loopy Toad saw Immortal Jinyuan take out the Skymen Stone, its heart was still shaken. This Skymen Stone could probably buy 5 houses in Jinghua. When all was said and done, this was a legendary cultivation big shot. Loopy Toad had simply been caught off guard when he took out such an expensive stone. After mending the abnormal space crack, Immortal Jinyuan breathed a sigh of relief. Previously, he had wanted to conserve the vital energy stored in the demonic heart stone and use his spiritual power to activate the divine mending stone to repair it. Although he could successfully repair it, it was rather time-consuming. Now that it used the Origin True Chi as its main energy source, the Heaven Mending Stone actually blocked the crack in space in an instant. Jinyuan hadn't noticed it before because he hadn't had a comparison. Now that he did, he realized that the gap between spirit energy and primordial chi was indeed a little big. Immortal Jinyuan looked at the half of the adult scavenger Kun's corpse. Just as he was about to lean over to take a look, this half of the body actually directly turned into a puddle of rotten mud on the spot, corroding a huge hole in the ground. Not dead. Immortal Jinyuan frowned. This is a primordial vicious beast, how can it die so easily? Little Silver said from the side. The difference between holy beasts and ferocious beasts was like the two extremes of yang and yin. Holy beasts focused on intelligence, while ferocious beasts focused on strength. However, if they both developed to the later stages, the strength of the two would actually be about the same. The only difference in the early stages would be the direction of the growth of their attribute points. Thus, ferocious beasts had extremely strong regenerative abilities. Even if half of their bodies were cut off, they could still survive as long as their core wasn't damaged. It was even more difficult to find the core in such a huge ferocious beast. A ferocious beast's core was very small, like a grain of millet. In a normal situation, it would already be very difficult for someone to fight a ferocious beast for the first time, and they wouldn't be able to care about looking for the core at all. Little Silver stared at the puddle of rotten flesh in front of him and sighed in his heart. If it was Master, killing such a ferocious beast should be as easy as turning over his hand, right? Little Silver couldn't help recalling the first time he had fought Master. At that time, Master had still been wearing a sports coat, and he had very handsomely raised his hand to slap Little Silver in his beast form and sent Little Silver flying with one slap. At that time, Little Silver vividly remembered how he had felt. He hadn't felt angry, nor had he felt the slightest bit of pain. Instead, after being slapped, he had felt a sense of excitement, as if he had indulged in a powerful oppressive force. Now that Little Silver thought about it carefully, perhaps from that time on, he had already believed from the bottom of his heart that Wang Ling was his master. Thinking this, Little Silver still felt a little regretful in his heart. Who knew when Master would be able to hit him again? The adult scavenger Kun fled, leaving behind this child scavenger Kun that had already broken free of control. The child scavenger Kun itself wasn't aggressive unless there was someone controlling it from behind. Now, the fishing line on this scavenger Kun had already been cut, and it lay motionless on the ground. The 3 views shattering hammer's weakening ability was a group attack that could forcibly weaken any hostile enemy. While this weakened state hadn't completely disappeared, Immortal Jinyuan continued to use Red Moon Blade Disc, intending to cut open this scavenger Kuin's body layer by layer to see what on earth was inside. Since he couldn't find the core, he just had to continue to cause damage to this scavenger Kuin. Furthermore, the recovery ability of a child scavenger Kuin wasn't as good as that of an adult scavenger Kuin. In this weakened state of all creatures are equal, Immortal Jinyuan felt that everything was now completely under his control. Let me see what on earth is inside this vicious creature of yours. Immortal Jinyuan's eyebrows furrowed into a small knot. Then, he carefully manipulated Red Moon Blade Disc to make precise cuts. The scavenger Kuin roared in pain and tried to flee, but Immortal Jinyuan raised his hand and nailed it to the ground with a golden light. Loopy Toad's heart shook as it sighed at how amazing little Masterling's little hammer was. This kind of weakening was just too sick. In this weakened state, whether it was a child scavenger Kuin or an adult scavenger Kuin, neither had the ability to resist. This thing had rough skin and thick flesh, and now that Red Moon Blade Disc continued to cut it open, the first layer of skin was finally completely peeled off. Jinyuan and Loopy Toad had thought that they would find a goo insect or something inside its body, but in the end, they were greatly astonished by what they saw. Inside this child scavenger Kuin, there was actually another scavenger Kuin wrapped up inside it. Immortal Jinyuan, Loopy Toad, Little Silver. To refine an even smaller Kuin into a goo insect, and then use the puppet goo spell to attach the goo insect to another Kuin. What kind of operation was this? Senior Dog, let me try again. Jinyuan was a little dumbfounded, and then continued to operate the blade disc to remove the second layer of skin of this Kuin. Although it was a little hard to believe, they had indeed seen it. Inside this second Kuin hidden inside the body, there was actually a third Kuin. Chapter 644. There were 3 baby Kuin inside this child Kuin's body, each smaller than the last. Little Silver couldn't help recalling a web game he had played called Big Fish Eat Small Fish. Refining an even smaller Kuin into a goo worm, and then using the puppet goo spell to plant the goo worm inside the smaller Kuin to parasitize it. Immortal Jinyuan came up with a guess. Little Silver thought for a bit, then cupped his chin and narrowed his eyes as he said softly, that should be the case, but this angler also used a characteristic of a vicious beast like a Kuin. What characteristic? Immortal Jinyuan asked in a low voice. Have you ever played the Big Fish Eat Small Fish game? Little Silver explained, when a vicious beast like a Kuin is in danger, it has a unique way of strengthening itself, and that is to devour smaller Kuin to strengthen itself. This is my first time seeing this, but my grandfather mentioned it to me when I was in the clan, so it definitely isn't fake. Hearing this, Immortal Jinyuan and Loopy Toad both understood. Planting a goo worm inside an adult Kuin was obviously as difficult as ascending to heaven, but it was very easy to plant it in a baby Kuin that had just been born and wasn't too big. Coupled with the Kuin's characteristic of the big swallowing the small to strengthen itself, controlling a baby Kuin with a goo worm was the same as controlling an even more powerful adult Kuin. Immortal Jinyuan couldn't help recalling the half of an adult Kuin that he had cut open with Red Moon Blade Disc. Although it had looked like a bloody mess, now that he thought about it carefully, when he had cut it open, the cross-section had been like a 1,000-layer cake. Immortal Jinyuan had never dealt with a vicious beast before, and had thought that this was the structure of a Kuin's body. Now that he thought about it, the adult Kuin that had survived after Immortal Jinyuan had cut off half of its body had probably swallowed several smaller Kuin. However, this was not the most frightening part of the story. It was actually the angler. To be able to make a prehistoric vicious beast like a Kuin feel threatened, and use this, the big swallowing the small, stress response to force itself to strengthen itself, what realm was this angler's expert realm? Immortal Jinyuan shivered. He was very glad that he had met Senior Dog, otherwise his encounter with a vicious beast on Drought Star this time might have ended tragically. The little hammer that Senior Dog gave him, he had to use it carefully. Immortal Jinyuan sighed in his heart. This magical little hammer was a genuine life-saving magic treasure. Furthermore, it was all thanks to Senior Dog's divination that he would be in trouble this time and had specially sent Little Hammer over. Otherwise, the consequences would have been really hard to predict. So even though Immortal Jinyuan was a little afraid of this mysterious unknown person, he felt inexplicably at ease when he thought about how he still had Senior Dog behind him. Since Senior Dog was able to create this magical hammer to counter, it meant that Senior Dog's strength might be on par with that mysterious angler's. The most troublesome thing right now was that they didn't know what the intentions of the mysterious angler were, nor did they know where he was. The only thing they knew was that it wouldn't be easy for the mysterious angler to tear open the spatial wall and let the Kuan fly over. That was because every time a special spatial crack was formed, it would be a true disaster if it was formed on a large scale. All in all, Immortal Jinyuan felt that this situation where they were out in the open and the enemy in the dark was actually very disadvantageous to them. The situation could be said to be a blur, and there was next to no information on the angler. But now, it wasn't that they didn't have any clues. Immortal Jinyuan stared at the already imprisoned baby Kuan on the ground, and an idea stirred in his heart. Senior Dog, do you want to cut it down again? Immortal Jinyuan asked. What was in front of them now was the second baby Kuan that this child Kuan had swallowed. Keep cutting, Dog 2 said in a low voice. Actually, it was also very curious about how many more layers there were inside. Very well, Senior, Immortal Jinyuan replied very politely. Immortal Jinyuan replied very politely. He concentrated on manipulating Red Moon Blade Disc and adjusting its size. The young Kuan inside were now getting smaller and smaller, so he had to be extra careful when cutting them. If the baby Kuan in the innermost layer really did contain a goo insect, then he would have to be even more cautious. The origin of the goo worm could be one of the important clues that could control the mysterious angler at present. Because there weren't many cultivators who knew how to use goo to begin with, and among this small group of cultivators, there was actually someone who knew how to use a powerful goo to control a primordial vicious beast. The number of people who were on the list in history could be counted on one's fingers. In fact, there was another clue. It was Little Silver's holy beast blood tracking spell. When the mysterious angler had retrieved the adult Kuan earlier, Little Silver had already left a few drops of his own blood on the Kuan. If this adult Kuan could finally return to the angler's side smoothly, Little Silver would be able to use the tracking spell to determine the angler's approximate location. It was just that this was a private mission that Little Master Ling had assigned them, so Dog 2 and Little Silver kept it to themselves and didn't directly say it out loud. I'm going to cut it. At that moment, Immortal Jinyuan felt like a surgeon in an operating theater who was about to operate on a patient, and he was especially nervous. But at the same time, there was a faint sense of excitement, as if he were about to open an express delivery. Hovering in the air, Immortal Jinyuan slowly lowered the Red Moon Blade Disc and started to cut open the skin of the second baby Kuan in his body. This scene gave off a chainsaw déjà vu. Little Silver had finished watching this movie not long ago, and for some reason, he felt that it was very tasty. Seeing this, Little Silver rubbed his belly. It was a pity that he had been on a diet recently, so he rarely ordered takeout. He planned to eat broccoli with grenade-throwing Senior Immortal for a while. But looking at this scene in front of him, he suddenly wanted to eat Midnight Dining Hall's red braised food. Boss Tan Siming and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal were friends, and each time grenade-throwing Senior Immortal placed an order, Tan Siming would give grenade-throwing Senior Immortal discounts and red packets. He was a very enthusiastic boss. Red Moon Blade Disc spun, and as blood gushed out of the second baby Kuan, the surface of its skin was cut open perfectly. This cut was perfect, and didn't touch the baby Kuan's internal organs. Dog 2 and Little Silver stepped forward to take a look, and the scene in front of them was beyond their expectations. Because what was inside this baby Kuin wasn't a Kuin. It was a living person. Chapter 645. A Kuin's stomach was big enough to begin with, and even a baby Kuin could swallow a wanxiang. Once its stomach was cut open, it wouldn't be strange for any kind of creature to spill out. But the girl in front of them wasn't in the Kuin's stomach, but was lying quietly on it like a curled-up baby, hugging its knees as it slept. This was a girl with long blue hair. Half of her face was covered by her hair, but it couldn't hide her beauty. Unexpectedly, the girl was actually very clean from head to toe. Even her face was the same, without the slightest trace of blood. They were all repelled by a layer of dim blue light, and this light came from the simple and crude gray ancient clothes she was wearing. This was an extremely corrosive scavenger Kuin, and every part of its body had a strong corrosive nature. The reason why this girl could lie here so peacefully was all thanks to the protection of the magic light emitted by the gray ancient clothes. What's this girl's background? Immortal Jin Yuan was stupefied. He had never expected to actually dig out a girl from inside a Kuin. And a beautiful girl at that. What should we do, senior dog? Immortal Jin Yuan used his magic power to draw the girl out and put her steadily on the ground before using the immortal eye to conduct a detailed examination. He didn't have any other intentions, he just wanted to check if the girl was injured. This girl was indeed very beautiful, with an incomparably otherworldly beauty that didn't belong to this world, as if she didn't belong to the common populace. In some sense, Loopy Toad felt that this girl's temperament was very similar to Little Master Ling's. How is it? Do you want me to feed her holy beast blood? Little Silver asked on the side, his hands on his knees. Not for now. This girl's vital signs are stable, she's just in a coma for some unknown reason. Immortal Jin Yuan cupped his chin in his hand as he answered. He then raised his head and gave Little Silver a very strange look. Only then did he realize Little Silver's identity with amazement. Miss Little Silver, so you're a holy beast. You just realized. Little Silver sighed in his heart. He felt that this legendary cultivator really wasn't much, he actually only realized it now. Immortal Jin Yuan smiled foolishly. Aw, Miss Little Silver, don't take offense, I've always been slow on the uptake. I felt that Miss Little Silver's aura was a little strange, it didn't feel like a spirit beast, demon beast, or magical beast, let alone a human. I completely overlooked a holy beast. I've always wondered if Miss Little Silver was an alien. Little Silver, X. Alien. Although this answer sounded a little heart-wrenching, Little Silver had to admit that after the extinction of holy beasts, most human cultivators' memories of them had begun to fade. There were only two major historical effects of the extinction of holy beasts. The first was the establishment of an annual Spirit Beast Protection Day, and the other effect was to stimulate the local dog meat hotpot culture. This was all thanks to the dog saint. However, the dog meat used in the dog hotpot culture in those regions was provided through legal channels, and the type of dog used was a type of meat dog that was specially eaten, similar to the dragon pork that Jai Yin often used to fry pork chops for Wang Ming. To be honest, Little Silver really wanted to eat it when he was free. Because it was said that the base for the dog meat hotpot in that region was an exclusive secret recipe based on what Dog Saint had been cooked back then. When he had watched Dog Saint being cooked back then, Little Silver remembered curling up in the dog clan's depository of Buddhist texts with an incomparably terrified expression on his face and an uncontrollable drool. To this day, he still couldn't forget the aroma of the spicy hotpot. We'll take this girl back first, I'll leave the rest to you. Loopy Toad stared at the sleeping girl for a long time before it finally made a decision. Because judging from the style of the gray ancient clothes she was wearing, it could tell that she wasn't an ordinary person. Leaving her here wouldn't be of any use, it would be better to take her back first and see if Little Master Ling had any way to wake her up. Alright, senior dog, don't worry, leave this to me. I've already taken control of this vicious creature, I'll find its core later and get rid of it once and for all. Immortal Jin Yuan patted his chest and laughed. All right. Loopy Toad nodded. If the hammer is about to run out of energy, you can directly summon me with your immortal talisman and I'll come over to recharge it. Although a limited-use magic weapon could only be used a limited number of times, it could be used continuously as long as it didn't run out of energy and was recharged in time. Thank you, Senior Dog. Immortal Jin Yuan nodded. Of course he knew what was at stake. This was also one of the main reasons why Immortal Jin Yuan wanted to do everything possible to save on using the hammer. Then, Dog 2 put its paw lightly on the girl's shoulder, and it and Little Silver stamped their feet, followed by a flash of golden light. 2 people and 1 dog reappeared in front of Lord Ma. Wang Ling already knew about the situation with the girl in gray. In fact, the moment Immortal Jin Yuan had cut open the vicious beast and rescued the girl in gray from its belly, he had already texted Immortal Toya. There had to be a reason why she was in a coma. Furthermore, the girl's background was unknown, so Wang Ling didn't want to directly wake her up in his own home. He didn't know this girl at all. Since her vital signs were stable and she had just fallen into an inexplicable coma, Wang Ling felt that the only thing he could do was send her to the hospital in time. He wasn't a hero, so he didn't need to show off by saving a damsel in distress. What was more, he still had to worry about the Beast King's remains summer camp in 2 days. After the summer camp, there was still the final exam. What wasn't more important than this? Thus, when Dog 2 and Little Silver brought the girl back, all Wang Ling could do was very gentlemanly place her on his bed with attraction spell. Fortunately, she was very clean and didn't need any special purification treatment. The only thing that Wang Ling was a little curious about was the gray clothes she was wearing. Because they had the aura of heavenly Tao on them. Wang Ling stretched out his hand to touch the gray clothes to see what they were made of. In the end, he had just stretched out his hand when Mother Wang directly opened the door and came in. Mother Wang sucked in a breath at the scene in front of her. The girl in gray was sleeping soundly on the bed, and Ling Ling's action of reaching out to touch the hem of the clothes, what were they doing? Mother Wang covered her mouth in astonishment. Then she slammed the door shut with a bang. Wang Ling. Chapter 646. This was already the second time. What was it like to be misunderstood by your own mother for the second time? Wang Ling felt that it was as embarrassing as someone seeing you dripping yogurt on your pants while wiping it off with a tissue in the bedroom. Looking at the bedroom door, Wang Ling felt that it was time for him to enchant it as well, at the very least, add a function for protection. It wasn't that Mother Wang didn't have the habit of knocking on the door, but that sometimes when she was in a hurry to say something, she would forget to knock. It could only be said that all mothers in the world were like this. Wang Ling looked at the girl in gray on the bed, and his eyebrows furrowed into a small knot. This was because he felt that this girl in gray had a different identity from a human cultivator. He had touched the material of this gray robe, but he couldn't tell what it was at all. In that case, there were 2 possibilities. First, the material of the gray robe came from outside the Milky Way, and it belonged to an alien material outside the Milky Way. Or, it was an extinct resource from the primordial era. In both cases, there was only one way for Wang Ling to learn about the material, and that was to set up an array to summon the heavenly Tao for information. Was he going to deliver crispy noodle snacks again? Speaking of which, it seemed that the box of toasted gluten-flavored crispy noodle snacks which he had specially ordered was already on its way. Wang Ling frowned and sighed in his heart. Heavenly Tao. It was July 22nd on Saturday in the 13th week of the semester. It was already the next morning when Immortal Toya arrived. He had already planned to set off from Chrysanthemum Island last night. After all, it was Ling Jinren's order, and he didn't dare slight it at all. In the end, he just happened to run into his 2 disciples, Jin Shi and Yin Shi's extracurricular cram school seminar. Jin Shi and Yin Shi had come to the island and been taken in as disciples by Immortal Toya. After personally training them, their damaged spirit roots had already been completely repaired. During their 13 years on the island, the siblings had learned a lot of knowledge and principles from immortal Toya, but being out of touch with the secular world for a long time was definitely not good. Jinshur and Inshur were still very young, so immortal Toya planned to help them find a cram school in the city while they were still able to absorb new things fairly quickly, so that they could interact more with the children in the city. The times were developing, and technology was advancing. In this era, even the models of alchemy furnaces were advancing day by day. There were even people who used hot pots to refine pills. This was a newly developed automatic hot pot alchemy furnace which immortal Toya had only recently seen. You just needed to plug in the electricity, mix the ingredients according to the proportion, and stew them in one pot. It was super convenient. The scariest thing was that this type of alchemy furnace was invented by a university student. Later, someone bought out the patent and became rich. It could only be said that there would always be talented people in every generation. Young people's thoughts were always novel and unique. Immortal Toya had always been very confident in Jinshur and Inshur's talents. Therefore, he planned to let the two siblings go to the city to gain some experience. The times had indeed changed. Immortal Toya couldn't help feeling a little emotional. A long time ago, it was the city kids who went deep into the countryside to gain experience. Now, it was obviously not a wise choice to be out of step with the times. Children in the countryside had to think of ways to get in touch with life in the city. Chrysanthemum Island actually had a lot of advanced technology, but that was only the tip of the iceberg. Thus, immortal Toya hadn't been able to come over right away last night because of his two precious disciples' extracurricular seminar. But he wasn't in a hurry. After all, the girl had just fallen asleep, and her life wasn't in danger. Immortal Toya's ride was a wooden carriage, which had a very special name, Wooden Ox. It sounded very slow, but in fact it wasn't slow at all. This carriage was specially customized with modern technology, and could also be used for three purposes. When necessary, it could turn into a machine-operated bird to fly in the sky, a machine-operated whale to act as a submarine, or a machine-operated dolphin to act as a speedboat. I'm taking you out today because I have something to do, and I'll show you around the city. Given your temperaments, you definitely won't get into fights with other people in the city, but we Chrysanthemum Island people shouldn't be bullied, understand? When it's time to fight back, you still have to fight back. Sitting on the wooden ox, immortal Toya reminded Jinshur and Inshur, who were sitting in the back, as he was about to start the vehicle. Yes, Shurfu. Jinshur and Inshur replied in unison, but when is the time to fight back? Immortal Toya was blank. He felt that this was a very difficult matter to define, which was why he had decided to send the siblings to the city to gain experience for a period of time. It was certainly good to be a pure and kind child nowadays, but if you wanted to survive, you would definitely suffer if you were too kind. The siblings' lives had already been very bitter. Most alchemists paid attention to the tranquility of their hearts, which meant that they wouldn't get angry easily. Jinshur and Inshur had been with him for many years. Although they might not have as much exposure to elixirs as the older alchemists on the market, children who had been exposed to alchemy from a young age had completely different temperaments. So, Immortal Toya's answer to the siblings' question was, if you feel angry, you can fight back. Remember not to kill them, and leave them alive. That way, I can save them. Yes, Shurfu. The siblings looked at each other and smiled. While Immortal Toya was on his way to the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling had a video call with Daoist Guang to ask him about the gray Daoist robe the girl was wearing. Daoist Guang's live streaming business had been in full swing recently, and the average number of people online had just broken the 20 million mark, bringing huge traffic to the website. When Wang Ling had looked for Daoist Guang in the morning, Daoist Guang had just been about to start a live stream. Daoist Guang looked carefully at the photo Wang Ling had sent him, and then shook his head. To tell you the truth, Senior Ling, I'm really stupid. I can't tell the origin of this grey Daoist robe at all. Daoist Guang had really examined it very carefully, although he hadn't held out much hope from the beginning. What realm was Ling Zhenren at? If he couldn't tell the origin of this Daoist robe, what could he do? He was also very desperate. Wang Ling nodded. Sure enough, in the end, he could only ask the heavenly Dao, but Senior Ling, I can't tell the origin of this Daoist robe. Does Senior know the origin of this robe I'm wearing? Daoist Guang smiled slightly, and then zoomed in on the video. Only then did Wang Ling see that Daoist Guang was no longer wearing that white Daoist robe, but a full maid outfit. Wang Ling, Daoist Guang scratched his grizzled hair. This is a flag I set up a while ago when the number of viewers broke 20 million. I said that as long as it broke through, I would dress in women's clothes. Later, I used the island's resources and made up this robe based on a picture online. Nowadays, audiences' tastes are really becoming stranger and stranger. What do you think, Ling Zhenren? Wang Ling replied, oh no. Daoist Guang, is it the feeling of being moved? Wang Ling, the feeling of having a heart attack. Chapter 647. It could only be said that Daoist Guang was really an honest man, and had very sincerely used the resources on the island to weave a very fitting set of clothes for himself. But Wang Ling really couldn't imagine what it would be like for an old man in maid's clothes to act cute in front of a mirror during a live stream and ask, "Am I beautiful?" It was a little too frightening, and could shatter one's worldview to the same degree as a classic movie line, "You just lost a leg, but she lost a beautiful love." But from a live streamer's point of view, Daoist Guang was a conscientious live streamer. At the very least, he hadn't reneged on his debt. It was just that Daoist Guang felt that he was going further and further down the path of live streaming, and was now on a path of no return, as he had completely forgotten about reconstructing his body. Wang Ling couldn't make a choice for Daoist Guang on this point. Everyone had the right to choose their own way of living. On the other hand, Daoist Guang now didn't have just one trick up his sleeve. As long as Daoist Guang wanted to, he could rely on selling figurines to survive the samsara spirit tribulation. When he had first started live streaming, that had just been an extravagant wish, but now it was completely achievable. It was very easy to find a group of fans among 20 million viewers who were willing to spend money on him. For example, there were still people who went to this band live streamer, Baboon, every day to burn incense and give gifts to him. Wang Ling didn't know what on earth these people were thinking. Wasn't it better to save money to buy crispy noodle snacks? Holding dog twos, but Little Silver sat on the edge of the bed. They had been watching over the girl in gray all night, but she showed no signs of waking up. Where on earth had she come from? Why had she appeared in the belly of a Kuan? What was her background? Why had she fallen into a deep sleep? He didn't know any of this. Little Silver couldn't help thinking of Yixian, the silly girl who had saved his life back then. In order to cure Yixian's illness, Little Silver had made a deal with Immortal Mansion to serve as the master of Immortal Mansion's gatekeeper Holy Beast for a while in exchange for Immortal Mansion's medicinal resources. Now, Yixian was staying at Ling Zhenren's place for memory rehabilitation, and she had to drink Immortal Toya's brain-strengthening medicine every day, but until now, there had been no results. When Little Silver had gone to see Yixian before, she had even forgotten his name. It wasn't that Immortal Toya's medicine wasn't effective, but that Yixian's amnesia was so severe that it was almost like the memory of a fish. Little Silver had heard that Immortal Toya had increased the dosage recently, and didn't know if Yixian was better. In Little Silver's view, Art Courtyard and this girl in gray had similar backgrounds. They were both unregistered residents. That said, my Toyai Sheep's eyes were glued to the scene. This was Sheep's first time seeing such a mechanical vehicle. Wang Sit hat said that Wong of said Wong, said duh. Sheep. Said that said, yay I be said, sheep. Wong. It had been less than a month since he had last returned to the Wong family's small villa, but for some reason, Immortal Toya felt like a lifetime had passed since he came here again. He had already heard the noise in his bedroom. Standing at the window, he saw Immortal Toya standing at the door with his two disciples, who seemed to be saying something. Jin Shi and Yin Shi followed closely behind him. Shifu, what's going on here? Didn't I tell you before? There's a great senior who lives here. Jin Shi and Yin Shi nodded. Yes, is it the senior who eats crispy noodle snacks? The two siblings spoke at the same time, and even their tones were exactly the same. Sheep was amazed by this scene. Immortal Toya, yes, that's him. It's not just this great senior, everyone in this villa is a senior. You have to be polite, understand? Jin Shi and Yin Shi lowered their heads in thought at the same time, then looked up at the same time. Then, Shifu, can you beat this great senior? The corner of Immortal Toya's mouth twitched at this question. Of course he knew that even if there were 100 or 1,000 of him, there was no way he could beat Ling Jinren. But the problem was that he regarded Jin Shi and Yin Shi as his own disciples. As their Shifu, how could he admit that he wasn't as good as someone else? However, Immortal Toya didn't dare directly pat his chest and say that he was very strong. He didn't even dare say that the chances of him winning were 50-50. He could brag about it in private, but the problem was that he was at Senior Ling's doorstep. Looking around out of the corner of his eye, Immortal Toya saw a figure staring at him from the second floor. That should be Senior Ling, right? Yes, it had to be Senior Ling. He didn't even need to sense his aura to know. Because Senior Ling's habit had always been to peek and observe in secret. To be honest, Wang Ling's figure at the bedroom window on the second floor gave Immortal Toya a great deal of pressure at that moment. Well, can we discuss this when we get back to the island? Is this a taboo question? Or is Shifu actually very weak? Jin Shi and Yin Shi opened their mouths again. Immortal Toya dropped his forehead deeply into his hand, feeling like his dick was hurting. If he had known earlier, he would have chosen to have Jin Shi and Yin Shi stay in the car. Initially, he had thought that since Jin Shi and Yin Shi had come to the city with great difficulty, he might as well bring them to Ling Jinren and familiarize himself with them. But who would have thought these two little bastards would start to undermine him? When all was said and done, they were country kids who had just come to the city, and had a lot of questions to ask. He should have bought Jin Shi and Yin Shi a set of 100,000 Ys each before coming. The current situation could be said to be a dilemma. Immortal Toya didn't want to lose face in front of his disciples, but he also didn't want to offend Ling Jinren in front of him. Then, at this critical moment, Immortal Toya had a bright idea. He immediately took out his phone and quickly typed out a text message. Wang Ling withdrew his gaze, and sure enough, he saw that his message had arrived. Immortal Toya, Senior Ling, help. Senior Ling. Wang Ling, Immortal Toya, Senior Ling, please let me brag. Wang Ling, seeming to realize that the previous text message was a little ambiguous, Immortal Toya hurriedly typed again. Please let me brag, Wang Ling, Immortal Toya, I'll give you a crispy noodle snack branch. Chapter 650. After the medicine was dripped, Immortal Toya quietly waited for the test results. There was a Lingqing acupoint on the chest, which was the place with the densest spirit qi on the surface of a cultivator's body. Therefore, the test medicine had to be dripped on the chest, and the results would usually come out within 5 minutes. If this girl in gray was really in a coma because of the poison, the results would be very obvious. But after 5 minutes, there was no reaction from the spot where the medicine had been dripped. Did it fail? Little Silver tilted his head. No, it's already succeeded. It's just that this girl is a little special. The chi produced by the medicine is actually transparent. Immortal Toya's expression changed to one of slight amazement. He had never seen this phenomenon before, but Immortal Toya clearly remembered that in his family's ancient ancestral texts, there was indeed a possibility that the potion might become transparent, but he had memorized it when he was very young. In addition, there had never been a situation where the potion had become transparent in the last 1,000 years, so Immortal Toya had forgotten that explanation a little, and would need to review it before he would know. There's no other way. I can only take this girl back to my place first, Senior Ling, Immortal Toya sighed. Although Immortal Toya had already anticipated from the beginning that this girl of unknown origin might be in a very troublesome coma, he never thought that he might have to face an illness that he had never encountered in his many years as a doctor. After that, Immortal Toya used the guide spell to guide the girl downstairs. He carefully placed her in the front passenger seat and fastened her seatbelt. Once they arrived on Chrysanthemum Island, the girl in gray would have to face a thorough examination, both inside and out. Of course, Immortal Toya couldn't do it alone. He understood the principle that men and women shouldn't touch. He would need the cooperation of Lianjinren, who had some medical expertise. Immortal Toya directly called Lianjinren. Hello. Lianjinren. I've just received a female patient from Senior Ling's family, and she's now in a deep coma. Immortal Toya gave her a rough account of his initial diagnosis. Lianjinren, I know. It just so happens that the rehabilitation medicine you prescribed for Yixian last time is about to run out. How about I bring her to stay on the island for a while? It just so happens that I can help you. Immortal Toya nodded. That would be great, Lianjinren. Thank you so much. Lianjinren said, What are you talking about? Senior Ling's business is our business. In fact, the people in the chat group already knew about the girl's background. Because of her mysterious identity, and the fact that the gray-clothed girl seemed to be wearing something special, the group of people were very curious about her identity. However, it was a pity that no one was able to find out the girl's identity. They couldn't even figure out the origin of the ancient robe she was wearing. By the way, do you have a photo of this lady? Lianjinren asked. Yes. Daoist Master, please wait a moment. I will take a photo for you. Immortal Toya put down his phone, then turned on the beauty camera and took a picture of the girl's sleeping face leaning against the passenger seat at a 45-degree angle. Jinren, here's the photo. When he sent the photo, Immortal Toya couldn't help muttering to himself that this girl was beautiful. On the other side, Lianjinren was silent for a moment when she saw the photo. Little Silver had mentioned in the group that this was a very beautiful girl, so Lianjinren had always wanted to see how beautiful she was. It was indeed very beautiful. But Lianjinren, she's not bad, but there are some places where she's lacking. Immortal Toya, Jinren, what do you mean? Lianjinren ran her fingers through her hair. Immortal, do you know the difference between the Mariana Trench and the plains? Immortal Toya, at noon, the Wang family's small villa had an extra pair of bowls and chopsticks, which had been specially prepared for Little Silver. Mother Wang had always liked Little Silver very much from the moment they met. Although she herself wasn't particularly fond of looking at a person's face, it was undeniable that good looks indeed added points. Why haven't I seen old Senior Wang lately? Little Silver sat upright at the dining table. Because Wang Ling was sitting opposite him, he was especially well behaved with his hands on his thighs, looking very obedient. Grandpa has been cultivating in seclusion recently, Loopy Toad answered mysteriously. Grandfather Wang and the head of Kitchen Knife sect were quickly approaching the time limit for their battle. Grandfather Wang had pretty much finished studying the recipes in the past few weeks, and he heard that he had been practicing his knife skills recently at the Chrysanthemum restaurant, where he used to work. In the last few days, Grandfather Wang had been going out before dawn every day in order to improve his knife skills. Loopy Toad stood guard at the door and immediately knew what was going on. Wong Ling nodded. Although he had been busy with the midterm exams and was about to be tossed about by the summer camp, he had always been concerned about his grandfather. His grandfather had never once thought of cooling down his passion for cooking, even though he had reached an advanced age. Come to think of it, Wong Ling remembered that when Grandfather Wong was young, he had been a famous chef at Kikaro restaurant. No one could match his self-created cloak knife technique, and he had won various awards all over the country for his exquisite knife skills. Now, these medals were locked in the old man's house in the countryside. Wong Ling remembered going to see it once when he was very young. It was filled with medals, trophies and certificates, and they were all genuine immortal gold. When he was young, Wong Ling remembered that someone had persuaded the old man to sell his medals and buy a house in the city. Given the capital he had accumulated when he was young, he could have casually sold one of his medals for a down payment on a house in downtown Songhai City, but he couldn't do that now. Of course, among all the achievements the old man had made, the most impressive had to be when he had participated in the first international knife nurturing competition, at the age of 30. He had once again won an international award with his cloak knife technique, and had even been given a title. As for what the title was, Wong Ling couldn't remember. It was a story he had heard when he was young. Wong Ling turned to look at Mother Wong telepathically with a puzzled expression. Mother Wong said as she arranged the tableware, "You don't remember? When your grandfather participated in the first international knife nurturing competition, he directly won the championship with his knife technique, and was given the title, Clear Sky Knife Luo." Wong Ling nodded. Right. That's it. Clear Sky Knife Luo. Chapter 651. Clear Sky Knife Luo. Little Silver felt like he had heard this title somewhere before. It was very familiar. Because Grandfather Wong had been busy improving his knife skills in the last few days, Mother Wong was now in charge of the Wong family's 3 meals a day. Since she had stopped writing and become a housewife, she had actually mastered a lot of life skills. Apart from taking care of family life, she didn't idle around, and used all her time to take all kinds of qualification exams. Tonight, Mother Wong was very particular about the side dishes, and had carefully planned out the meat and vegetable pairings. The starter dish was a crystal radish, which was an imported ingredient and very expensive. But it just so happened that they were on sale today, so Mother Wong bought 2 of them. She stored one in reserve, and sliced the other and stir-fried it with shredded meat. Mother Wong named this dish, Stir-Fried Radish King. The meat dish was vegetable meatballs, also known as vegetarian lion's head, which were made from minced broccoli and diced meat mixed with a certain proportion of eggs and flour. Actually, the main ingredient for this dish wasn't broccoli, but the Wong family now had so much broccoli that they couldn't digest it, so every time Mother Wong went out, she would bring several bags of broccoli with her to give away. Although the vegetable dish had been replaced with broccoli, which caused the original lion's head to lose its elasticity, that didn't stop Wong Ling from liking it very much. But because it was more troublesome to prepare, Mother Wong generally only cooked it when there were guests. This just happened to show that she really liked Little Silver. Oh, that was right, Mother Wong had named this dish, Vegetarian Lion's Head. Of the remaining 2 dishes, one was Wong Ming's favorite star grouper, but unfortunately he wasn't here today. The other dish was the soup for the evening, mushroom soup. It was made with a type of imported sea bacteria and Sarracenia bacteria, which were very good for intestinal health. Miss Silver is so thin, eat more. If it's not enough, there's more in the pot. Mother Wong smiled at Little Silver as she scooped rice into her bowl. He lowered his head shyly. It's enough. I actually don't eat much. Wong Ling and Loopy Toad gave him disdainful looks. I've never seen such a shameless Silver. Little Silver picked up his bowl and chopsticks, and only when he saw Wong Ling pick up food did he dare move. Then, where's Senior Wong? Master's father. Little Silver remembered that he had only been to the Wong family's small villa a few times, and had very few opportunities to meet him. He's busy composing. Let's eat first. He's always been like this. Mother Wong smiled helplessly. I'll send food up later. Looking at the second floor, Little Silver couldn't hold back his chatterbox. What book did Senior Wong write? I can see. The live-streaming Life of the Immortal King is serialized online, and the previous one was called Let Go of That Wet Nurse, Loopy Toad replied. You can find it online, but remember to subscribe to the original version. Of course. Little Silver replied solemnly. Little Silver silently memorized the names of these two books. These were Senior Wong's masterpieces, he definitely had to read them. Not only did he have to look, but he also had to jot down the key points in his notebook. Little Silver suddenly remembered that when he was at Grenade Throwing's house, he would see Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal reading a novel when he had nothing to do, and studying it as he read it. Little Silver now completely understood. It turned out that he was reading Senior Wong's novel. Master was already so awesome, then how strong was Senior Wong? There had to be something in this novel. In the evening, it was Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal who had specially come to the Wong family's small villa to pick up Little Silver. Because he was afraid that Little Silver would be arrested and taken to the police station if he went home alone, it could be said that Grenade Throwing had gone to great lengths. On the way home, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal saw that Little Silver actually wasn't watching TV or online soap operas, but was instead reading an e-book very seriously, and he was startled on the spot. What are you reading? So serious. Senior Wong's masterpiece. You've been reading it the whole time, right? If you have any notes, can I borrow them to copy? Little Silver looked at Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a sweat. I don't have any notes, it's just some of my own speculations. Senior Wong's book is a little profound, and I haven't fully grasped it yet. If you're interested, we can study it together. For Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal, this would definitely be difficult. Tens of millions of people chased after Senior Wong's novels. Just a casual call to the monthly votes list would result in an overwhelming victory. So many people were reading it, but how many of them could truly comprehend it? Until now, it was likely that no one had managed to decipher anything from the novels, so it definitely wouldn't be that easy for people to comprehend. The so-called Heavenly Tao's profound mysteries still needed to be carefully examined. In the past, it might take more than 100 years of continuous research to decipher the profound meaning of a spell scroll. Senior Wong's new book had only been serialized for a few months now. How could it be so easy to comprehend it? Little Silver thought for a bit and frowned. Grenade Throwing, I think we're still missing a step. That's why we can't comprehend what Senior Wong wrote. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal thought this was a little interesting. For example, I think we're still lacking practice. Little Silver closed his phone. Although he had only read the opening chapter of the novel, he was already beyond excited and had a strong urge to write. Little Silver had been wondering before whether there was any way he could earn money at home without going out. Little Silver had looked online for a long time, but most of the job listings for part-time typists online were actually scammers. After living at Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal's place for so long, Little Silver felt that he should also learn to be self-reliant. And just now, Little Silver felt that Senior Wong had given him a lot of inspiration. Grenade Throwing. Little Silver stared at Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal with a serious expression on his face. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal. Little Silver, I want to write a novel. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal. That night, Little Silver already couldn't hold back his desire to write, and he quickly wrote the opening chapter according to the novel's format. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal sat next to Little Silver and waited, wanting to see what on earth this guy could come up with. Little Silver, Grenade Throwing, what do you think of this opening chapter? Grenade throwing senior immortal, what's the theme? Little Silver was full of confidence. It's a story based on Senior Wang's image as a writer, and tells the story of a great godly writer who, after falling into desolation, makes a comeback. Grenade throwing senior immortal glanced at the screen. Little Silver's novel opened like this, average subscriptions, 30. The youngster's face was expressionless as he gazed at the number of favorites displayed in the background. There was a hint of a self-deprecating sneer on his lips, and he clenched his fists so tightly that his slightly sharp fingernails dug into his palms. Wang Situ, average subscriptions 30, flop author 3rd Dan. In the authors group, and looked at the background data and announced it in an indifferent tone. As soon as the S words came out, there was no surprise that it caused a stir in the group. Average subscriptions 30. As I expected, this trash author is a flop. This good-for-nothing really disgraces us authors. If it wasn't for the fact that the is his friend, this kind of good-for-nothing would have been kicked out of the website long ago. Elsewhere in the EL department, the sighed deeply after announcing the news. Next to him, the patted him on the shoulder. 2 years ago, he still had an average subscriptions of 5,000. 2 years, instead of advancing, he's regressing. If this goes on, he's going to drop out of flop author 3rd Dan. Little Silver, what do you think? Chapter 652. It was July 23rd on Sunday in the 13th week of the semester. It was still the office on the top floor of that high-class office building in the heart of the city. In the lady of the castle's office, the tall and sturdy lord of the castle, who was dressed in a black robe and had a full beard, had unexpectedly arrived in the morning. They were about to receive the most important guest of Mo Immortal Castle, so they had to show the highest hospitality, a cup of milk powder made from 800-year-old spirit rhinoceros milk. Plus 2 pieces of rock candy. Seeing that it was almost time for the appointment, the lady of the castle started to brew the milk powder. This 800-year-old spirit rhinoceros milk powder was the Lord's prized collection, and there were only 2 cans in total. The Lord of the castle had one in his house, and the other was stored in the lady of the castle's office, so that he could drink it when he received important guests and when he came in person. My lord, is President Bai looking for us this time because the information we provided last time was wrong? Is he blaming us? The lady of the castle looked a little flustered. Previously, President Bai had been anxious to find that green-furred dog and its owner for revenge. They had provided the green-furred dog's coordinates, and he had sent Mr. Liu to test it out. In the end, it had been a silver-haired young man. Our information has always been accurate, and it's impossible for us to be wrong. It's precisely because of this that President Bai is looking for us again this time. Sitting in his boss's chair, the lord of the castle interlocked his fingers and cupped his chin as he said, "As for last time, my venerable self doesn't think our information was wrong, but that the other party was on guard and tampered with it in advance." This, what do you mean? The lady of the castle was puzzled. This subordinate is slow-witted, please explain, my lord. The lord of the castle's expression darkened. Our Mo Immortal Castle's soul mark is unique and very secretive, and is an important tool for providing us with a huge amount of information. However, we can't rule out the possibility that an almighty could discover the soul mark and even transfer it without us noticing. The lady of the castle was alarmed. My lord, are you suspecting that someone transferred the soul mark on that green-furred dog? I'm afraid so. The lord of the castle nodded his head. Even so, we can still deduce 2 things. First, the relationship between that silver-haired young man and that green-furred dog is unusual. My lord, you're absolutely right. The lady nodded. We've already photographed this silver-haired young man and this green-furred dog walking together, but what is the second point that the Lord is talking about? The lord of the castle replied, the second point is that the owner of this green-furred dog definitely isn't an ordinary person. I'm afraid he's an extremely powerful almighty. Being able to transfer our immortal castle's soul mark without a trace isn't something an ordinary person can do. As for whether the owner of the dog is the young man in the villa, it still needs to be verified. If he was an extremely powerful figure, the castle lord really couldn't associate such a big figure with a young man. Although the 10 generals dispatched by Immortal Castle had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of this mysterious and unfathomable youngster, whether or not the other party was the Almighty who could transfer the soul mark had actually yet to be verified. From the information that the fort lord currently had, whether it was that green-furred dog, that silver-haired young man, that great death-courting senior, and even that young man called Ajwa whom he had always called the root of all evil, none of them were simple characters. Furthermore, this Ajwa was currently in the limelight. These characters looked complicated, but in fact they were very simple. If everything was attributed to that youngster, then it was very easy to explain. Have you found anything on that youngster? Thinking this, the lord of the castle frowned. Previously, they had sent out a number of intelligence agents to investigate the identity of that mysterious youngster, but the responses they had received were all pixelated. We've found a little. The lady nodded. This time, our intelligence agent started with the people around this youngster and were able to gather information on this family. Then, in a roundabout way, they found a very mysterious place where this youngster often goes to study. A place to study. The lord of the castle was blank. Logically speaking, even if this youngster wasn't the same person as that Almighty, he shouldn't be too weak, but he had actually gone to study. Sure enough, did outstanding people secretly take remedial classes? Where does this youngster study? Which sect? The lord of the castle couldn't help drinking a mouthful of milk. He also wanted to register for a class later. Number 60 high school, the lady answered truthfully. Then, with a huff, the lord of the castle directly spat out a mouthful of milk. He was alarmed. Why was it this damn place again? Less than 10 minutes after the lord of the castle and the lady's conversation, President Bai finally showed up. This time, the person next to President Bai wasn't Mr. Liu or Elders Wu Wu, but that sissy-looking Elder Ji Xing. When President Bai showed up, Elder Ji Xing was applying foundation to his face with a powder puff. This time, President Bai had come to ask for specific information on that youngster. When the lord of the castle learned from the lady in advance that this youngster was a student at No. 60 high school, he inexplicably felt a little nervous. In fact, there really weren't many places that the lord of the castle could call damn places. While Immortal Castle's intelligence network was outstanding because of its enormous network of spies, there were some places where the network hadn't been set up. For example, Huaxiu Alliance HQ, the family apartment where Wei Ji lived, and any place that had anything to do with the 10 founding generals were off-limits for intelligence spies. Just a while ago, the lord of the castle had wanted to list number 60 high school as off-limits. That was because this school was too strange. It seemed that all the Almighties who had been caught recently had something to do with this school. But the lord of the castle never expected that even the youngster whom they had been so painstakingly investigating for so long, was actually a student at this high school. Such a valiant youngster was actually studying at a foundation establishment high school. The lord of the castle couldn't help twitching his lips as he felt like his 3 views had already been shattered. When President Bai entered, he didn't say anything as he found a sofa and sat down. The lady brought the cup of spirit rhino milk over, but the other party didn't even look at it. Have you prepared the information we asked for? Next to President Bai, that elder Ji Xing asked. Since it's President Bai's request, we've naturally prepared it. The lord of the castle stretched out his hand, and the lady handed him the prepared information. It was a very small USB flash drive with all the information inside. But the moment he handed over the USB flash drive, the lord of the castle hesitated a little. He stared at President Bai and smiled awkwardly. That. President Bai, are you sure you won't reconsider? Chapter 653. As an intelligence organization that currently enjoyed a certain reputation in Shanghai City and even the world, MO Immortal Castle had been able to establish a foothold here for so long, and even pull back from the brink many times when the organization was on the verge of extinction, was inseparable from the customer satisfaction that MO Immortal Castle had built up over a long period of time. The truth was that it wasn't just the underworld of the cultivation world that bought intelligence from MO Immortal Castle, there were also legitimate clients. In the end, it was just a competition of who had the highest price. As MO Immortal Castle's highest level client, President Bai enjoyed lifelong confidentiality, which meant that MO Immortal Castle wouldn't sell any intelligence on him to outsiders. Similarly, as a partner of this level, apart from the corresponding right to privacy, MO Immortal Castle also guaranteed his personal safety. Number 60 High, at least in the eyes of the Lord of MO Immortal Castle, it was a pretty sinister place. There were simply too many big shots who had knelt here. Even those who had survived, like that Daoist Tao Tai, were at the very least the junior brother of that history teacher from number 60 High. Now that the Lord thought about it carefully, he felt that the reason why Daoist Tao Tai had been able to escape unscathed was definitely because he was related to a teacher from number 60 High. However, the Lord of MO Immortal Castle's kind advice didn't attract the attention of President Bai and that Elder Ji Xing behind him. Elder Ji Xing just accepted the information on behalf of President Bai, then directly inserted the USB into the portable handheld computer he carried with him and started to read it. Number 60 High. Elder Ji Xing felt that this place was a little familiar. It seemed to be a place that had appeared repeatedly in the news recently. President Bai, Elder Ji Xing. I think you should reconsider. The Lord was silent for a moment, then said, this school is a little sinister, and our MO Immortal Castle is already prepared to list the entire school as a restricted area. After that, we won't arrange for any intelligence agents to operate around this school anymore. Is it that bad? Elder Ji Xing laughed cruelly. I remember now, that director Zhua who's in the limelight now, didn't he graduate from this school? It's a small school, but there are a lot of capable people. Yes, apart from this youngster who for some reason is still studying at this Foundation Establishment High School, the teachers in this school aren't ordinary people. The Lord of the Castle stroked his beard and reminded him, previously, the destruction of the world-class killer organization Shadow Stream was inextricably linked to this school. In fact, in this school, there is indeed a pair of epic-ranked killers in the world of assassins. When the Lord said this, President Bai's eyebrows finally twitched slightly. Elder Ji Xing asked curiously, are you talking about that Daoist Tao Tai and gorgeous itinerant? That's right. The castle lord answered honestly, after gorgeous itinerant retired, he became a history teacher in this school. A while ago, his junior brother came to our MO Immortal Castle to buy information and wanted revenge. Unfortunately, the two of them seemed to have reached a compromise in the end. Other than these two assassins, the rest of the teachers in this school, regardless of their realms, are not easy to deal with. At this point, the castle lord sighed inwardly. He really did his best. In fact, there was some slight exaggeration in this, as he deliberately made the teachers of number 60 High seem very mysterious. But the truth was that apart from gorgeous itinerant, number 60 High's headmaster Chin was currently the only one who could be considered an expert among the teachers of number 60 High. This headmaster Chin wasn't easy to deal with. All in all, while his description was a little exaggerated, the lord of the castle didn't want his important client to have anything to do with this kind of troublesome place. However, not everyone had the same strong desire to survive as the lord. Apart from the slight twitch of his eyebrows just now, President Bai didn't seem to care about number 60 High at all. Ji Xing, I'll leave this school to you. After a brief silence, President Bai gave the order to Elder Ji Xing next to him. How should I deal with it? Elder Ji Xing gave a treacherous smile. Raise it to the ground, President Bai said lightly. All right. Elder Ji Xing nodded. This wasn't the first time they had done this, it was just that the scope this time was much wider. It was just a foundation establishment high school. Apart from one or two teachers who were more difficult to deal with and that mysterious youngster, it was basically a one-sided massacre. Instead, Elder Ji Xing felt a little excited. When the time came, as long as President Bai used the Wuji umbrella to divide number 60 High School District into an independent space, Elder Ji Xing would be able to sneak into the space and do whatever he wanted. A confident smile appeared on Elder Ji Xing's face. It was a standard smile with a dagger hidden behind it. Don't worry, Lord President, I'll definitely handle it beautifully. That good-for-nothing Zhuo Wu is too soft-hearted, but I'm different. The lady was also blank when she saw his expression. I haven't asked President Bai, who is this elder? Ji Xing looked at President Bai, who raised his hand to indicate that Elder Ji Xing could reveal his identity. Elder Ji Xing looked at the lord of the castle. I forgot to introduce myself to the two of you. My name is Ji Xing, and I am President Bai's #1 weaponsmith. I've been studying on Sun Island all these years, and I only returned to Lord President's side not long ago. When I was studying on Sun Island, some people called me Sonico. Sun Island. The lord of the castle narrowed his eyes. He hadn't realized that this elder Ji Xing was actually an overseas returnee. But when it came to studying on Sun Island, the lord of the castle immediately had some ideas about this elder Ji Xing. Judging from his tight-fitting attire, it was very likely that he had been studying ninjutsu from Sun Island. That place was the size of a pellet to begin with, and for him to specially go there to study, it definitely had something to do with ninjutsu. The lord of the castle smiled slightly. It seems that Mr. Ji Xing is proficient in ninjutsu. I can't be considered proficient, it's just my own understanding. Elder Ji Xing smiled. But when it comes to my path of seeking the Dharma, there are too many stories on it. For example, on Sun Island, I once encountered a very powerful baldy who used the one-punch ninjutsu, which almost made me suffer a great loss. The lord of the castle, and the result. Fortunately, I only lost an egg. Elder Ji Xing smiled. Previously, my alias was actually Sonic. Chapter 654. In the lady of the castle's office, President Bai and Elder Ji Xing had already left after obtaining the documents they wanted. The lord of the castle's fingers were crossed as he stared ahead with a profound gaze, still feeling very sorry for President Bai's decision to attack number 60 High. The lady would never forget this solemn expression for the rest of her life. In her memory, Mo Immortal Castle had been on the verge of collapse several times, but the lord had never looked as constipated as he did today. In fact, the lady knew very well why the lord was persuading President Bai. It was because President Bai was currently Mo Immortal Castle's most important source of income and guest. If this guest died, Mo Immortal Castle would have to look for someone else. What do you think President Bai's chances of winning are? The lady looked at the lord and couldn't help asking. 10%, or even lower. That's scary, the lady was stunned. In her opinion, President Bai's strength was already exceedingly high. Furthermore, this overseas returnee Elder Ji Xing's aura was clearly higher than Mr. Liu's, and he was an out-and-out super expert. For such an expert to slaughter a foundation establishment cultivator, it would be as easy as slaughtering a chicken. But the lord actually didn't think he had the slightest chance of winning in the face of a foundation establishment high school. How little confidence did he have in President Bai and the others for him to make such an assertion? There are times when people have to believe in metaphysics. The lord was very insightful, and his expression was unperturbed. I didn't believe in metaphysics before, but have you noticed that as long as the information we receive has anything to do with number 60 High, nothing good will come out of it? The lady was blank. Thinking about it carefully, she realized that it was true. The lord sighed. With Elder Ji Xing's death, President Bai's left and right arms have all been broken, and I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for much longer. Given our current financial situation, we can survive for half a year at most, which is far from enough. We have to look for our next target as soon as possible. The lady had no idea that the Lord was actually already thinking about what to do next. The Lord sighed. Go look through our previous client profiles and see if there are any who currently have a deep cooperative relationship with us. Sell them some information on Elder Ji Xing, the lady. Lord, you mean? What I mean is, you should go and see if there are any crematoria or coffin clients. Sell them information on Elder Ji Xing so that they could prepare in advance. I have a strong feeling that Elder Ji Xing will definitely be in the center of the funeral. But Castle Lord, Demon Hunters Association is our important cooperative client. We've signed a confidentiality agreement. This confidentiality agreement is only for when one is alive. It doesn't say after one's death. It was a busy Sunday. At home, Wang Ling scrolled through the class group chat, which hadn't been idle for even a moment. According to the excellent gossip spy Dopigua, Mother Wan was holding a food tasting event at 4 in the afternoon to invite parents who were free to try her new dishes. The scariest thing was that quite a number of parents actually agreed. The parents didn't know how scary Mother Wan was, but as people who had been through it, no one knew better than the students from number 60 high how scary this kitchen maid was. Mother Wan's fan Bing Bing conned me pretty badly last time. I wonder what she'll come up with this time. Dopigua typed in the group with lingering fear. Super Chen laughed through the screen and couldn't help replying, "Everyone, do you still remember the Shadow Stream killers who invaded our school last time?" Everyone. Super Chen, one of them snuck into the school canteen and was killed by Mother Wan with a spoon. I've been thinking that this might be a quicker way to die. Eating slow food might be even more painful. Everyone, Wang Ling, as the saying went, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will emerge victorious. Elder Ji Xing hadn't thought much of this small foundation establishment high school at first, but recalling the Lord of Mo Immortal Castle's repeated advice, he decided to come to number 60 high to take a look first. Elder Ji Xing had deliberately disguised himself before going out. He looked very feminine, so it was very easy for him to dress up as a woman. Generally speaking, using a woman's image would greatly lower people's vigilance and make it easier to sneak in. Thus, Elder Ji Xing put on a golden wig, a long black dress and a pair of red high heels as he went out. The wig on his head was very expensive. It was a disguise magic artifact, and not only could he change his hair color at will, he could even adjust its length at will. The most important thing was that the wig was stuck to his scalp the entire time and would blend in with every inch of his scalp, so it wouldn't fall off easily and cause any embarrassment. Elder Ji Xing was very curious about number 60 high. Qingyun Road in Peiyuan District, this was where number 60 high was located. Elder Ji Xing looked up at the sky and noticed that there was a very thick barrier around number 60 high. This school is so run down, but the barrier outside is very thick. Elder Ji Xing couldn't help muttering in his heart. He didn't know that number 60 high's defensive measures had actually already been very good after several enemy attacks. Actually, just 2 months ago, number 60 high didn't even have a decent barrier. Elder Ji Xing had initially wanted to sneak in, but now it looked like he could only break in through the front gate. In the end, when he arrived at number 60 high's front gate, he was greatly disappointed by the scene in front of him. This school was a little small. Not only was it small, its basic facilities weren't very comprehensive. Even through the main gate, he could feel the thick air of history and vicissitudes from this school. Elder Ji Xing didn't want to get close to the dilapidated stone sculpture at the entrance at all. The metal ball on it was covered in rust, the stone platform was covered in moss, and there were even small mushrooms growing on the side. How many germs were on it? Just looking at it, Elder Ji Xing couldn't help shuddering. He was a germaphobe. Elder Ji Xing decided that when they officially charged into the school tomorrow, they would blow up this broken stone sculpture first. He felt that every inch of this cramped school should be cleaned up. "Parent, may I ask which teacher you're looking for? Did you report it in advance?" Oldly, the school guard, had noticed the blonde girl in front of him right away. Elder Ji Xing smiled slightly and changed her tone to that of a sweet and pleasant girl. "Sir, it's like this." Just as Elder Ji Xing was about to make up a reason to fool her and then enter number 60 high to take a look, he never thought that the school guard would directly say, "Parent, are you here to participate in Mother Wan's food tasting?" Food tasting. Elder Ji Xing was blank. Before he could come back to his senses, Oldly directly opened the gate and let him in. "Parent, this way, please. Turn right for the canteen." Chapter 655. Just like that, Elder Ji Xing inexplicably snuck into number 60 high school. Food tasting event. What was that? In order not to arouse this school guard's suspicion, Elder Ji Xing went to the entrance of the canteen building on the right under Old Li's gaze. Then, he saw a sign at the entrance with the words, "Food Tasting Event for Parents" written on it. It really was a food tasting event. Just how bored was this school? Why did they organize such an event? While Elder Ji Xing was staring at the sign, an old auntie in a chef's uniform came out of the building and stared at him with a smile on her face. "Parent, are you here to participate in the food tasting event?" This old auntie in a chef's uniform was none other than Mother Wan, and her smile at that moment was very kind. Elder Ji Xing had wanted to ask where the washroom was and pretend to sneak away in search of it, but he had only let out an "hem" before Mother Wan directly grabbed his arm and pulled him into the room. "That's great. I knew it. There are still very honest parents. I sent out a hero invitation for this food tasting event a week ago, but in the end, the dishes were all prepared today, but no one showed up. Suddenly, they all said they had something to do. I've been waiting at the entrance for a long time. I've finally caught a parent alive." Elder Ji Xing, not far behind Elder Ji Xing, Old Li, who was at the entrance, watched Mother Wan pull Elder Ji Xing inside and heaved a slight sigh of relief. It was indeed Mother Wan's food tasting event today, but no parents had come at all. Although he understood what the parents were thinking, Old Li felt that Mother Wan was a little too pitiful. She would definitely be very sad if no parent came. Just as Old Li was wondering whether he should find a few people to pretend to be parents for the food tasting event, he happened to see Elder Ji Xing, disguised as a beautiful blonde, standing at the school entrance. Although this parent looked a little unfamiliar, she was in any case a living parent. Old Li didn't even think about it before opening the gate and letting her in. Outside the school, after seeing the blonde enter, a little brother in plain clothes silently took out his phone to make a call. The person he was talking to was none other than Jiang Haifu, the head of Kitchen Knife Sect. Sect head. "How's the situation?" The little brother glanced at the name list. "I've already stopped all the parents who came to participate in this food tasting event. But a parent still went in. This parent doesn't seem to be on the list." "How many parents?" "Just one," the Kitchen Knife Sect master sighed. "One. What a pity. However, we've already achieved our goal by intercepting the other parents. After all, saving a life was better than building a 7-storied pagoda." No one else had tried Mother Wan's dishes before, but Jiang Haifu had tried them long before school started. As a golden core cultivator, he had almost perforated his stomach. He knew Mother Wan too well. The scariest thing about her cooking wasn't that it was poisonous. Instead, it was the beauty of the poison. The dishes that were brought out looked very decent. From the plate presentation to the decoration, they were all very exquisite. Even the taste was very normal. However, a terrible chemical reaction would occur when they entered the stomach. Therefore, in the eyes of Jiang Haifu, the master of the Kitchen Knife Sect, these dishes were actually like the beautiful poisonous mushrooms in the forest. "Sect master, what should we do now?" You'd better keep an eye on them. If anything happens to this parent, remember to call an ambulance. Very well, sect leader. The little brother nodded obediently. But sect leader, I'm a little puzzled. But sect master, I'm a little puzzled. Why aren't the parents protesting? Jiang Haifu, the kitchen knife sect master, replied, most of the parents actually don't know how terrifying Mother Wan's cooking is. I stopped them to give her some face. She's already a senior at number 60 high, and it's not easy for her to devote herself to studying new cuisine. As for why I'm taking so much trouble to think of her, it's actually very simple. The little brother, Jiang Haifu, the kitchen knife sect master, covered his face and laughed bitterly. She's my shifu. The little brother, number 60 high's canteen was very big, and it was a standard 4-person table. Mother Wan enthusiastically pulled Elder Ji Xing into the canteen. His head was full of fog, and he had no idea what on earth was going on. There was no one else in the empty canteen, and he and this enthusiastic kitchen lady were the only 2 people left. With a blank expression on his face, Elder Ji Xing was led by Mother Wan to a seat. There were 10 dishes on the table, and in order to maintain a sense of mystery, they were all covered by covers. Elder Ji Xing sighed in his heart. He was now at the scouting stage, and he couldn't directly make a move like this. There was no other way. He could only endure and finish all the dishes here for now, then pretend to leave the school and think of a way to sneak in and explore. That was what Elder Ji Xing thought with a sigh in his heart. When he raised his head, he saw that the kitchen lady in front of him already looked like she was about to burst into tears. I'm so touched. This parent. You're the only one who's invited today. Elder Ji Xing took a deep breath, wondering if it was because this kitchen lady's cooking wasn't good, so no parent had dared come. But when Mother Wan lifted the lid of the first pot, Elder Ji Xing was stunned by what he saw. This was fried rice, but each grain was piled up like snowflakes, making it look like a snowy winter scene. Coupled with the ketchup sprinkled on the sides of the rice, this dish was actually full of art in Elder Ji Xing's eyes. This plate presentation, this design, and most importantly, when the lid was lifted, the dish actually glowed. The first dish was Mother Wan's new specialty, Fan Bing Bing. Elder Ji Xing was stunned. It looked like this kitchen lady wasn't a simple person. She might even be an expert. This time, Elder Ji Xing was even more confused. Judging from the plate presentation and appearance of this dish, it should be a very delicious dish. Furthermore, it was very fragrant. Elder Ji Xing thought that at his level of cultivation, he could already completely eliminate his desire for good food, but the moment he saw the lid lifted, he actually felt the urge to eat it. Elder Ji Xing swallowed, then picked up the spoon on the side, scooped up a spoonful, and put it in his mouth. Then, his eyes widened. It had a very fragrant and sweet taste. To put it simply, it was delicious. Elder Ji Xing was even more puzzled now. He glanced at the other 9 dishes that were still sealed, and knew that each of them would definitely be better than the last. Then, he stared at Mother Wan and commented, "Old auntie, this dish of yours is very good, that's good." Mother Wan was overjoyed. This parent actually hadn't collapsed. It seemed that his experiment had succeeded. After a brief silence, Elder Ji Xing said, "But why didn't any parents come to taste it?" Saying this, Mother Wan was a little sad. "That's right, it wasn't easy for me to cook these dishes. If you like them, eat them all. Forget it, my painstaking efforts won't be in vain." Hearing this, Elder Ji Xing was instantly moved. Elder Ji Xing thought back to when he had been studying ninjutsu on Sun Island back then, and had also been treated with disdain. In some sense, he felt that he and Mother Wan were in the same boat. Thus, Elder Ji Xing nodded very seriously. "All right. Then I won't stand on ceremony." Chapter 656. It was just the first dish of fried rice, which had an incomparably refreshing and sweet taste, but it actually moved Elder Ji Xing in a way that he hadn't felt in a long time. Sure enough, was this what a mother tasted like? Elder Ji Xing suddenly felt his nose sting a little. His mother had died very early and left when he was very young. Growing up, Elder Ji Xing had never felt a mother's love, and in that moment, tears actually welled up in his eyes as an inexplicable echo rang out in his heart. What is filial piety? What is love? What is maternal love? And most importantly, Elder Ji Xing couldn't help looking up at the sky. This fried rice reminded him of his mother in the depths of his memories. Who knew if his mother was doing well on the other side of the heavenly state? Why was he looking up at the sky? It was to hold back the tears that were on the verge of flowing out of his eyes. At this thought, Elder Ji Xing felt a little ashamed. He had cultivated hard for many years and had a profound realm, so he thought that he wouldn't be shaken by anything. But in that moment, he was actually forced to almost cry by a golden core kitchen lady's fried rice. It was actually quite embarrassing to say this out loud, so Elder Ji Xing could only bear with it. After he calmed down, Elder Ji Xing looked at the 9 uneaten dishes and was suddenly a little afraid. He was afraid that if he ate one dish, he would feel the urge to cry. What would happen then? He wanted to refuse, but before he could open his mouth, Mother One had already placed her hand on the cover of the second dish and directly lifted it off. It was still accompanied by a strong light, which was no weaker than the first one. Mother One showed off her second dish, heavenly silkworm potato strips 2.0. Because heavenly silkworm potato strips often caused insomnia and blocked spirit energy after eating version 1.0, Mother One had improved the cooking method of the heavenly silkworm potato strips on this basis to introduce the current version 2.0. In fact, all the dishes tasted here were version 2.0, including the first dish, Fan Bing Bing. In version 1.0, these new dishes would more or less cause different side effects after eating them. For example, Fan Bing Bing's fried rice would cause diarrhea. But now that version 2.0 had been introduced, Mother One was actually very confident that in theory, these dishes wouldn't have any side effects. In theory. In fact, Mother Wan's suspicions were confirmed. After eating Fan Bing Bing, not only did this beautiful female parent not feel the slightest pain, but she also didn't collapse. Most importantly, this parent actually revealed a touched expression on her face. It could only be said that the improved version 2.0 Fan Bing Bing was very successful. Mother Wan was very excited. She eagerly hoped that this fated parent would try all the new version 2.0 dishes she had developed. For this heavenly silkworm potato shredded, I've been very careful from the beginning of the selection process. I won't choose a potato that's too big or too small. It has to be a proper potato. And have you noticed? Every shredded potato of mine was cut perfectly, with the same length and thickness. In order to ensure the freshest texture, it took me a long time just to cut the shredded potato. Quick, give it a try and see how my cooking is. Elder Ji Xing realized that he already had no room to refuse. This was the heavenly silkworm potato shredded which the other party had painstakingly cut. Even if the heavenly silkworm potato shredded was a drag on the updates, it wasn't her fault as she was such an ethical cook. The other party had worked so hard to cut the heavenly silkworm potato shredded, but he didn't even try it. How shameless was that? Thus, Elder Ji Xing picked up a piece with his chopsticks and put it in his mouth with great emotion. He sighed in his heart. He didn't know if it was because he had eaten the first Fan Bing Bing, but it had fueled his nostalgia for his mother. And it was precisely this hint of emotion that made Elder Ji Xing realize that his sympathy had instantly burst out like a waterfall. Not only did this golden core cook have his mother's taste in her cooking, unconsciously, Elder Ji Xing felt that Mother Wan's words had a mother's tone, and he couldn't refuse her. As expected, this heavenly silkworm potato shredded with his chopsticks caused Elder Ji Xing's eyes to well up with tears again. The stir-fried shredded potatoes were simply too good. Not only was it very delicate, it was also crispy and extremely refreshing, like a home-cooked meal from his childhood. This time, Elder Ji Xing wasn't just thinking of his mother, he was also thinking of his grandmother. It was as if his grandmother had cooked this potato shredded for him. Elder Ji Xing remembered that not long after his mother's death when he was very young, his grandmother had taken care of him for a period of time, but less than a year later, she had also passed away. Thinking about it, Elder Ji Xing instantly felt even sadder. When he was young, a fortune-teller had said that he was the bane of his existence, and that he would be the bane of all the people close to him. In the end, they had really left him one by one. Actually, this was one of the main reasons why Elder Ji Xing had now embarked on the evil path of the Demon Hunters Association. When his family had left him one by one, he had truly felt like he had been abandoned by the world. Thus, he had started to cultivate hard and had immersed himself in the study of refining weapons, until he had met President Bai. The past was still vivid in his mind. Elder Ji Xing ate the fan bing bing and the potato shredded. Little by little, like an old movie, he finished the two dishes in his mind. Mother Wan was pleasantly surprised at this scene. This parent had actually finished the food. And after eating the fan bing bing and the heavenly silkworm potato shredded, she actually hadn't collapsed yet. It seemed that her research on her dishes had really been successful. Mother Wan actually hadn't wanted the parent to finish all of her dishes. Although this parent had been very strong and hadn't collapsed after the first bite, Mother Wan couldn't guarantee that there wouldn't be any risks if she ate the entire dish. In theory, she could guarantee that there wouldn't be any after effects after the first bite, but that was only limited to the first bite. But this female parent had actually finished it all in a very intoxicated manner, and didn't even look the least bit hurt. Her research on her dishes had really been successful. At that moment, Mother Wan's heart couldn't help trembling a little. She had been studying these dishes for so long. Could they finally be released now? However, just as Mother Wan was feeling overjoyed, Elder Ji Xing's eyes suddenly widened. He felt his vision suddenly blur, and with a plop, he fell head first into the plate in front of him. Chapter 657. This, Mother Wan's heart suddenly tightened. After sensing for a while, she discovered that this female parent was still breathing, and instantly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that this parent had just fainted. After all, this female parent had eaten 2 of her dishes, and most importantly, she had finished them. But the side effect of fainting wasn't with the fan bing bing and the heavenly silkworm potato strips. Mother Wan felt that it was a little strange. Logically speaking, only the third dish, holy shit tomato, could cause this sort of instant fainting. But after the improvements in version 2.0, Mother Wan was still very confident that just one mouthful would definitely be fine. She just couldn't eat more. Staring at the female parent who had collapsed on the table, Mother Wan sighed and then took out a bottle of emerald green pills which she had prepared herself. This pill was called the empty stomach cleansing pill. As long as one was eaten, it could instantly dissolve everything in the stomach, including the toxins in the body. Of course, this was an emergency medicine, and would only take effect within 3 minutes of eating something wrong. If you ate it too late, you would have to be sent to the hospital for manual gastric lavage. Mother Wan poured out one pill and wanted to feed it to Elder Ji Xing, but just as she stretched out her hand, Elder Ji Xing's head suddenly moved and he stood up on his own. Mother Wan, Elder Ji Xing opened his eyes hazily with a dazed expression on his face. He rubbed his eyes and felt a little dizzy. But very quickly, this symptom disappeared, and was replaced by a head full of fog. He remembered that he had been about to eat the next dish, but why didn't he have any memory of the previous 2 dishes? Seeing Elder Ji Xing's dazed expression, Mother Wan immediately had an idea. From this female parent's blank expression, she guessed that the other party might have lost her memory, but the problem was that the side effect of memory loss wasn't from these two dishes. Could it be a combination of toxins? Mother Wan thought of a theory. Because no one had ever been able to eat two new dishes in a row. Now, this female parent had eaten two dishes in one go, and had even eaten them clean. After the toxins from the two new dishes had been combined, a brand new side effect was formed, and the side effect of the fan bing bing and the heavenly silkworm potato strips was fainting and temporary amnesia. After thinking it over, Mother Wan felt that this was the only reasonable explanation. Even she didn't expect that there would be such an operation. However, from the current reaction of the female parent, it was just fainting and intermittent amnesia. She was still alive. Thus, Mother Wan smiled kindly at Elder Ji Xing again. Parent, the food tasting has officially begun. Please taste the first dish, holy shit tomato. As soon as she said this, Mother Wan directly lifted the third lid. Elder Ji Xing. Wait. The food tasting has just begun. Then why were there two empty plates before the third dish? Mother Wan gave Elder Ji Xing a brand new pair of chopsticks. Parent, these are your chopsticks. The first two dishes had already been eaten by other parents. Because they were too delicious, they finished them all. You came at the right time. Elder Ji Xing, or, are there any other parents? Mother Wan smiled. Yes. But she had already finished eating and went back. I still have other things to do later, so I'll need you to appraise the remaining dishes. Elder Ji Xing was stupefied. Was that so? Before Elder Ji Xing could think about it carefully, Mother Wan had already started to introduce the third dish. Holy shit tomato version 2.0. Not only had the tomato ingredients been further improved, but even the white granulated sugar of this dish had been upgraded. This wasn't ordinary white sugar, but the Qin family sugar, which was produced in abundance in Jiangzhou City, formerly Guangling Prefecture City, which was known as the ancient capital. Each caddy was sold in immortal gold. Don't look at my tomato salad. These aren't ordinary tomatoes, and I was very careful when I picked them out. This sugar is from the Qin family in Jiangzhou City, which I bought with my retirement salary. I added a total of 3 spoonfuls to this tomato salad. Hurry up and try it to see how my cooking is. Elder Ji Xing realized that he already didn't have any leeway to refuse. This was the famous Qin family's sugar which he had spent a lot of money to buy. This was a famous seasoning. Furthermore, he had come all the way here, but hadn't even tried a single dish. Even if his initial goal had been to sneak into number 60 high to scout the place, since he had come in under a disguise, he had to put on a good show. He absolutely couldn't arouse this kitchen lady's suspicion. And most importantly, this was a dish that the other party had painstakingly made. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if he didn't even try it? It hadn't been easy for the old lady to make these dishes. How could he waste her good intentions? Thus, Elder Ji Xing picked up a tomato salad covered in sugar and put it in his mouth. This was, in a flash, tears welled up in Elder Ji Xing's eyes. This tomato salad was simply too good. The sourness of the tomato combined with the sweetness of the Qin family's sugar perfectly blended the two flavors together, and he was extremely moved. This time, Elder Ji Xing thought of his grandfather. His grandfather had taken care of him after his grandmother had passed away, and was best at making salad. Unfortunately, not long after his grandfather had taken care of him, he had gone to look for his grandmother. Elder Ji Xing couldn't help sighing in his heart. This tomato salad was filled with the flavor of his grandfather whom he missed so much. When he came back to his senses, Elder Ji Xing realized that this tomato salad had already been swept clean by him. Elder Ji Xing wiped the tears from his eyes. When he came back to his senses, he saw that the kitchen lady, who had originally had a kind gaze, was now staring at him with eyes as wide as bronze bells. It was as if she was looking at a lab rat. But when Elder Ji Xing rubbed his eyes, he saw that the kitchen lady's expression had changed back to a kind one with a slight smile on her face. Was this an illusion? In fact, it wasn't Elder Ji Xing's illusion just now, but Mother Wan observing his reaction. She actually wasn't sure if there would be any new side effects. A few seconds later, Mother Wan saw Elder Ji Xing plunge headfirst into the third plate. Mother Wan, it seemed that the side effects of fainting and amnesia from the first two dishes hadn't completely disappeared. After eating the third dish, the side effects of the first two dishes had been refreshed and intensified. This time, Mother Wan didn't feed him the medicine, but waited quietly. After a few seconds, Elder Ji Xing woke up as Mother Wan had expected. Chapter 658. This time, Mother Wan had prepared a total of 10 dishes, and Elder Ji Xing had been tricked into finishing the 9th dish under Mother Wan's persuasion. Then, he nodded and plunged into the 9th empty plate in front of him. For some reason, Mother Wan's conscience ached a little. There was still one last dish left. This wasn't an ordinary fried meatball, but it was a truly new dish that Mother Wan had come up with recently, because no one had tried version 1.0 of this dish before. It was made from a kind of spirit silkworm chrysalis, and one had to choose one that had just formed a chrysalis for half a month to ensure the freshness of the ingredient. The specific cooking method was very simple. After picking out the spirit silkworm chrysalis, wash them, and dice them up, mix them with dragon pork and the crispy bones of a spirit chicken according to the ratio. Add in fresh eggs and corn flour, roll them into a ball, add in seasoning, and finally fry them at high temperatures. The crispness of the crispy bones and the unique chewiness of dragon pork ensured the elasticity of the meatball. After being fried at high temperatures, the diced spirit silkworm chrysalis would melt into a liquid like egg yolk cheese. When bitten down, it would explode. Mother Wan felt that this idea of hers was very genius. However, she had only put the fried meatballs in the fridge the last time, and had planned to have someone try them the next day. In the end, the next day, all the fresh food in the fridge had actually rotted, thus, Mother Wan hadn't taken this fried meatball out for anyone to try. However, she had given it a very nice name, Crispy Chrysalis Balls. Now, Crispy Chrysalis Balls had already reached version 2.0 after Mother Wan's own modifications. The crispy chrysalis balls now wouldn't cause the food around them to rot or go bad, but it was really hard for Mother Wan to imagine what kind of adverse reaction this female parent, who had already eaten 9 of her dishes in a row and was still suffering from amnesia, would have when she ate this last fried meatball. Mother Wan's conscience ached a little. After all, she had never tested this crispy chrysalis balls before. What would happen if there was an adverse reaction when it was put together with another dish she had eaten before? So in order to prevent this from happening, Mother Wan almost subconsciously decided to put away the last dish before the female parent woke up. Unfortunately, she was still one step too late. Just as Mother Wan was about to put away the plates, this female parent suddenly stretched out her hand and tightly grabbed her wrist. Mother Wan then saw this parent raise her head with an intoxicated expression as she stared at her and muttered, "The food tasting begins now." Mother Wan was startled. Holy shit! This parent's head had been damaged from eating. Furthermore, she felt that this parent was a little too strong. Mother Wan gripped her wrist tightly and wouldn't let go. No wonder this parent was fine after eating so many dishes. It turned that her realm wasn't low. On the contrary, he was a little disappointed at the moment because in this way, the effect was not that great. If this parent's realm was very high, he might be able to resist the side effects of his trial dishes purely with the quality of his body. In that moment, Mother Wan sighed abruptly. It looked like she still had a long way to go on the path of culinary research. Mother Wan sighed deeply when she saw this female parent staring fixedly at her 10th dish with an expression as if she had been toyed with. Parent, calm down, our food tasting event is already over. Look, all the parents from before have already left. Elder Ji Xing looked around in a daze, and his consciousness seemed to have cleared up a little. He looked at the 9 empty plates and the 9 pairs of chopsticks next to him. It turned out that there had been other parents who had been here for the food tasting. Elder Ji Xing shook his head and then rubbed his temples. He was really too muddle-headed. He didn't even remember this sort of thing. Disguising oneself was also a compulsory course for a ninja. As an overseas cultivator who had returned from Sun Island to study, Elder Ji Xing felt a little ashamed at that moment. He had actually made such a rudimentary mistake while hiding in enemy lines. Sorry. Elder Ji Xing let go of her. My good intentions were a little muddled. But Elder Ji Xing was actually a little puzzled in his heart. For some reason, he felt like he was forgetting something. It's fine, parent. Mother Wan gazed kindly at the female parent and just wanted to urge her to leave as soon as possible. The 10th dish is our freebie. I'll help you pack it up and take it back. The parents from before have already brought some back. Is that so? All right. In order not to be exposed, Elder Ji Xing could only go along with Mother Wan's words and agree. The truth was that at that moment, even Mother Wan herself was extremely nervous. She was a little worried that this female parent would notice something. But in fact, she was worrying too much. Mother Wan had underestimated the amnesia side effect of her previous dishes. The reason why Mother Wan wanted the female parent to pack up this fried meatball to take away was in fact a delaying tactic. Mother Wan thought that this female parent's realm was so high that she would probably be able to digest all the food she had eaten on the way home. If that was the case, she wouldn't have to worry about any side effects from eating this crispy chrysalis ball. And so, 10 minutes later, Old Li and Mother Wan stood at the entrance of number 60 High School on Qingyun Road, sending the bewildered Elder Ji Xing off with kind expressions on their faces. Mother Wan, take care, female parent. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend my food tasting. You're welcome to come again. Elder Ji Xing. It had to be said that this had been a very vague and confusing experience for Elder Ji Xing. He somehow felt that he had forgotten something from the moment he stepped into the school, and he should have been here to scout things out. In the end, he had been led by the nose by the school kitchen lady and the school guard, who were now sending him off rather politely. Elder Ji Xing really didn't know what kind of expression he should wear. In his days, Elder Ji Xing now seemed to understand the Lord of Mo Immortal Castle's repeated warnings. Don't go near number 60 high. Don't go near number 60 high. Don't go near number 60 high. Now that Elder Ji Xing thought about it carefully, he felt that there might really be a problem with this school. Elder Ji Xing looked helplessly at the takeaway box in his hand and sighed deeply in his heart. Chapter 659. It was still July 23rd on Sunday in the 13th week of the semester. It was also the night before the Demon Hunters Association officially launched their revenge plan against number 60 High. After Elder Ji Xing finished checking out the location, he returned to the secret base which the Demon Hunters Association had set up temporarily with a takeaway box. It was in a mountain forest to the north of Songhai city center. Using the excuse of a corporate picnic, the contact person in the organization had spent some money to book this place. After confirming that all the teachers and students of number 60 High had arrived for the first class the next morning, President Bai's Wuji umbrella barrier would envelop number 60 High and separate the space. The moment number 60 High disappeared from the map, it would be time for their show. Elder Ji Xing paused for a moment at the entrance to the mountain forest with the takeaway box in hand. He could already sense the auras of the ninja experts whom he had temporarily invited over from Sun Island. President Bai had ordered them to raise number 60 High to the ground in their revenge plan this time. But this was far from enough. It would be too merciful to just let those teachers and students die in retaliation. This wasn't the Demon Hunters Association style at all. Thus, Elder Ji Xing had specially invited his fellow students who had studied ninjutsu with him on Sun Island for this revenge plan this time. These people were both cultivators of ninjutsu and magic, and each of them was a rare talent. Elder Ji Xing and his fellow students would carry out this revenge plan together. What he wanted to show the teachers and students of number 60 high wasn't just the despair of death, but the terror of being powerless to struggle before death. Elder Ji Xing decided to use the cruelest and most inhumane method to take revenge on the teachers and students of number 60 high in a comprehensive manner, both mentally and physically. Elder Ji Xing even wondered if he should deliberately leave a few people alive. After witnessing their classmates and teachers die one by one in front of their eyes, the mental pressure these people would suffer would definitely be even greater. After all, there were times when living was more painful than dying. As he thought this, the corners of Elder Ji Xing's mouth couldn't help curling up slightly as he imagined all kinds of evil plans. As soon as the first class at number 60 high started tomorrow morning, they would be able to do whatever they wanted. The temporary base camp was set up in the forest. It was a square military tent with enough space inside. Carrying the takeaway box, Elder Ji Xing made his way through the forest and saw the brightly lit tent from afar. Just as Elder Ji Xing was about to approach the tent, he turned to the side and swiftly raised his hand. He raised his fingers and caught a transparent poisonous needle flying toward him in the dark between his fingertips. Elder Ji Xing didn't even bother to look, and just quietly said, "Come out, Nank Sauce." There was a movement in the bushes behind them, and a child in ghillie garb emerged from the bushes. It was a young boy about 10 years old. He looked a little black-bellied and had a puzzled expression on his face. As expected of Sonico. "When did you discover me?" Nanko frowned and asked. "I noticed you before we entered the forest. Your ability to hide your aura is getting better and better. Outsiders definitely won't be able to find you, but I can," Elder Ji Xing replied. Although this Xingtai looked like he was only 10 years old and even his voice was that of a child, in fact, his cultivation was already very profound. This wasn't a deliberate disguise, nor was it some kind of magic transformation. Instead, it was caused by a highly poisonous fruit which he had inadvertently eaten when he was young. It had caused his body to shrink and he was unable to grow up again, just like a living Mount Heaven maiden. Although he looked like a child, during his time on Sun Island, this Nanka's overall grades had been among the best in his class. His most common trick was this transparent poisonous needle called the half-step smiling needle, which he had just caught. After being hit by it, the victim would laugh wildly several times before collapsing as if they were drunk. Furthermore, this needle was so poisonous that it was effective even on itinerant immortals. "Nank Sauce, nice to meet you." Looking at this Xingtai, Elder Ji Xing raised an eyebrow. "Didn't Maoli-chan come with you?" The Maoli-chan that Elder Ji Xing was talking about was in fact this Xingtai's partner. The two of them often appeared as father and son in gray to carry out all kinds of infiltration work, and were practically inseparable. Working together over the years on Sun Island, Maoli-chan had already been successfully packaged as a famous detective and was active in every corner of Sun Island. Furthermore, after this father and son duo assassinated their targets, they would often use their reasoning skills to frame innocent people. It could be said that their cover was truly flawless. No one would believe that Maoli-chan's true identity was actually a member of the Demon Hunters Association who cultivated both ninjutsu and ninjutsu. "Maoli has something to do and can't come," Nanko replied, then walked in the direction of the tent. "He has a family on Sun Island. Sonico should know about this, right?" Nank replied, then walked towards the tent. "Of course I know." Elder Ji Xing nodded. In order to better conceal his identity, this Mr. Maoli had already started a family and business on Sun Island. He disguised himself as a local resident and even opened a business office. This was already no longer a secret in the Demon Hunters Association, and the members who had been sent to Sun Island for research back then all knew about it. Mao Li-chan's daughter is about to take the college entrance examination, so I'm taking part in this operation, Nanku replied. Daughter is going to take the college entrance examination. Elder Ji Xing was blank at this answer. Is Mao Li-chan's studies that outstanding? The truth was that it was all thanks to this Nanku that Mao Li-chan had been able to become a famous detective all these years. As a living, heavenly mountain Tong Lao, Nanku had a very high IQ. Of course he's not good at studying. But he can help his daughter eliminate the wrong answers, Nanku said. Elder Ji Xing, after entering the military tent, Elder Ji Xing saw that the group of Demon Hunters Association cultivators who had been studying on Sun Island back then were almost all in place. Lord Sonico. Hello, Lord Sonico. When Elder Ji Xing walked in, a lot of people greeted him. Elder Ji Xing looked at the table, which was filled with more than 10 bottles of watermelon juice. It actually wasn't strange that there was juice, since there was an orchard in this mountain forest to begin with. After returning from number 60 high, Elder Ji Xing's throat had been feeling a little uncomfortable. The moment he saw the watermelon juice, his eyes instantly lit up. Who prepared the juice? Very considerate. Elder Ji Xing praised, then narrowed his eyes. Chapter 660. After drinking this mouthful of juice, the burning sensation in his throat seemed to ease a little. But what puzzled Elder Ji Xing was that this juice didn't taste sweet, but rather had a very strange taste. Perhaps it wasn't watermelon juice, but some other spirit fruit. Elder Ji Xing smacked his lips and felt that the juice was a little sticky. Although it wasn't very refreshing, it did moisturize his throat. What kind of spirit fruit is this juice from? Elder Ji Xing raised his head to ask, and realized that it was silent all around him. No one answered. He did a head count in passing, and felt that 2 people were missing. Brother Mingren and Brother Yaren aren't here. There was silence all around. Elder Ji Xing, can someone give me an explanation? Whether it was Mingren or Yaren, they were both very powerful members. Mingren had inherited the blood essence of the 9-tailed demon fox, and when he was young, he had been unable to suppress the demon fox's irascibility, which had led to disaster several times. But during his time studying on Sun Island, Brother Mingren had cultivated diligently and successfully mastered the technique of suppressing the demon fox's aura. Now, in battle, he could freely use this power to fight. If he had this power when attacking number 60 high, when Mingren summoned the demon fox, he would definitely be able to deal a heavy blow to the spirits of all the teachers and students in the school. There was even less to say about Brother Yaren, who was born with an immortal body, just like President Bai. But the difference was that President Bai's immortal body had been cultivated, and his immortal body could become stronger and stronger as he cultivated it. Although Brother Yaren was born with an immortal body, and it would take some time for him to come back to life, it was still immortal. Because they still didn't know how strong the overall combat strength of that mysterious youngster from number 60 high was, Elder Ji Xing had called Elder Yaren over from Sun Island this time. In reply to Lord Sonico, a member called Erju replied, "There's a problem with the demon fox in Brother Mingren's body." How could that be? Elder Ji Xing was startled. This 9-tailed demon fox has been cooped up on Sun Island for too long. When it came to Washo Nation this time, it asked Brother Mingren to take it for an ion perm and trim its fur. Then, what happened next? The demonic fox asked the hairdresser to trim it a little. In the end, the hairdresser shaved off all 9 of its tails. It is now in a state of isolation. Currently, Brother Mingren is taking demonic fox for emergency psychological treatment. Elder Ji Xing hadn't expected this kind of blunder at all. He hurriedly picked up the red spirit fruit juice in front of him and took a big gulp to suppress his shock. Then, what happened to Brother Yaren? For some reason, Elder Ji Xing noticed that the expressions of the members around him seemed to be worsening. Their expressions flickered and their faces were dark, as if they had something on their minds but didn't know whether they should say it or not, and Elder Ji Xing was all too familiar with this expression. His expression was like that of a doctor in a hospital telling a patient that he was about to be diagnosed with a terminal illness. Could it be that something big had happened to Brother Yaren? Elder Ji Xing's heart trembled, and he didn't dare let his imagination run wild. He and Yaren had always had a good relationship. Back on Sun Island, when he had still been completely unaccustomed to the learning environment, it was Yaren who had helped him time and time again. Not only had Yaren helped him learn the language, every time he didn't have enough time to finish his homework, Yaren would lend him homework to copy. Although copying homework wasn't right, he and Yaren had indeed built up a deep friendship through copying homework over time. But to be honest, among everyone on this trip, Yaren, who was the least likely to get into trouble, had actually gotten into trouble. Elder Ji Xing had never expected this at all. Because Yaren was born with an immortal body, how could something happen to him so easily? Elder Ji Xing had wanted Yaren to be the deputy commander for this operation, so he was at a loss for what to do with this sudden turn of events. At that moment, the atmosphere in the military tent was very oppressive, and even the air seemed to have frozen. Almost all of them had their heads lowered, their faces ashen. In fact, Elder Ji Xing could understand the current situation very well. After all, this had suddenly happened before the battle, and Elder Yaren was usually very popular, so everyone's mood would be affected to a certain extent. No one wanted to see something happen to Elder Yaren. Elder Ji Xing lowered his eyes. Just a few days ago, they had sent each other messages to ask after each other. In the end, who knew that an accident would actually happen? Elder Ji Xing took out his powder puff to touch up his makeup. This was a habit that helped suppress his nervousness and seemed to calm him down a little. A moment later, he broke the silence and took a deep breath. If anyone knows the truth, please tell me the truth. Did something happen to Elder Yaren? He turned his gaze to Erju. In this situation, Elder Ji Xing couldn't count on anyone else to have the guts to tell him. Only this Erju was different. This person had been through a lot and his mental fortitude was exceptionally strong. No matter what happened, he could basically remain calm. After carefully thinking for a while, Erju started to organize his words. He looked at Elder Ji Xing and replied, "Soniko, you should know what Teacher Yaren's most commonly used ability is, right?" Commonly used ability. Elder Ji Xing frowned. The scope of the immortal body's ability was too vast, so Elder Ji Xing guessed that Brother Erju was probably referring to the ability that extended from the immortal body. As a good friend of Elder Yaren's for many years, Elder Ji Xing knew Elder Yaren's ability like the back of his hand. Thus, Elder Ji Xing immediately thought of a common spell that Elder Yaren had told him about before, which was derived from the great ability of an immortal body, the body transformation spell. This was a spell that could divide a person's body into several viscous slime pieces when they suffered a fatal blow. In the end, they would come back together bit by bit to reconstruct the body and resurrect. Seeing Elder Ji Xing's pensive expression, this brother called Erju also said faintly, "Elder Yaren's body transformation technique has already reached the pinnacle. It's not just the ability to divide his body into pieces." Then, could it be that Elder Yaren's cultivation has gone berserk? No. Erju shook his head. Elder Yaren is already adept at dividing his body into powder instead of just pieces of flesh. Elder Yaren wanted to break himself down before you arrived, Soniko, and then reassemble himself when you showed up. So, Yaren is here. Yes. Where is he? Chapter 661. The body transformation spell. The immortal body was one of the profound abilities of the body, which could automatically divide the body into equal parts. The higher a person's realm was, the more parts they could divide into. Once they cultivated the ultimate profound ability, they could completely divide their body into a liquid state. Yaren had wanted to give Elder Ji Xing a surprise, but unfortunately, as soon as Elder Ji Xing entered the tent, Elder Ji Xing drank a part of his body. No matter what part it was a very uncomfortable ending. Furthermore, because he had lost a part of his body, Elder Yaren's recovery time was much faster than before. It wasn't until the next morning that Elder Yaren completely recovered from his liquid state. But the most miserable person was still Elder Ji Xing. Elder Ji Xing threw up all night, and even the makeup on his face was ruined by his vomiting. Considering the lack of manpower in the team and the fact that Elder Ji Xing wasn't in a good state, Elder Ji Xing had no choice but to drop the plan for the time being. The revenge plan, which had originally been scheduled for July 24th on Monday in the 14th week of the semester, had to be postponed for a day. This was a slightly sorrowful attack plan, and this bumpy attack was in fact still going on. It was July 24th on Monday in the 14th week of the semester. When he got up in the morning, Wang Ling's eyelids finally stopped twitching. It seemed like it had been a very, very long time since his eyelid twitched as a warning. It was a sign that something bad was going to happen to him in the near future. The truth was that his eyelids had started twitching in the wee hours of the morning, and had been twitching for a whole 5 hours. Disaster level, 4 stars. This was probably one of the most serious warnings Wang Ling had received since he was a child. The last time he had received a 5-star warning was when he had been 10 years old, when Loopy Toad had fallen from the sky on his way to buy crispy noodle snacks. That scene from 6 years ago was still vivid in Wang Ling's mind. A 5-star warning was a city-level disaster. A 4-star warning, Wang Ling pondered it, and the first thing he thought of was the school. Number 60 High might be in danger. It actually wasn't strange for him to make this guess. On one hand, President Bai was still at large to this day. On the other hand, Wang Ling guessed that Jua, who had been in the limelight recently and had served as the commander of one case after another, was very likely to become the new target of the Demon Hunters Association's retaliation now that they couldn't find Loopy Toad and their revenge on Little Silver had failed. It was just that given how dangerous the people from the Demon Hunters Association were, dealing with Jua alone was a little too small of a scale. If they could take revenge on this director's alma mater, it would definitely inflict even greater psychological trauma on Jua. Thus, when his eyelid warned him this time, he almost immediately thought of number 60 High and Jua. Whether it was the school or this disciple of his, he felt that he had to protect both. What a joke. Number 60 High's first semester final exam was just around the corner. For number 60 High to mess up at this critical juncture, they were always late for exams, but never absent. The truth was that Wang Ling had already started to prepare for the final exam. Given number 60 High's teacher's nature, if the exam was postponed, there was an 80% chance that they would change the type of exam questions, and his revision would be for naught. He had spent a lot of time just analyzing the questions these few days. I absolutely can't let anyone ruin the sacred final exam. Wang Ling was exceptionally resolute in his heart. Considering that Jua might be in danger, Wang Ling's thoughts stirred. Next to the bed, Jinka turned into a streak of brown light with a whoosh and disappeared. To be on the safe side, Wang Ling felt that it would be better to let Jinka keep watch. After all, the enemy at hand was more cunning, and might already be more than a pair of long johns could protect him. When he left the staff apartment in the morning, Jua realized that he was being followed. He and Deputy Director Zhong Lang were sitting in the same car, and both of them could clearly sense the abnormality in the back of the car. Hands on the steering wheel, the driver deliberately took several detours according to Jua's instructions, but in the end, the gray van was still following them closely and methodically. Lord Director, Lord Deputy Director, what do we do now? The driver asked helplessly. Jua frowned. We've taken so many detours, which are completely different from our usual route to work. They should have already sensed that we've discovered them. There's no point in playing hide and seek like this. Audra calmly analyzed the situation. It was obvious that the people following them had come prepared. They knew their usual route to work like the back of their hand, and had probably already grasped a lot of intelligence on them. And it just so happened that Audra's car was still under maintenance today, which was why he had taken Zhong Lang's car to the General Administration of 100 schools. Just thinking about it made Audra's back break out in a cold sweat. Because it looked like the other party had been watching him for a very long time, as expected, he was still the target. Audra sighed. Brother Joie, what should we do now? Zhong Lang asked. Audra took out a pair of long johns and a pair of long johns from the storage space in his pocket. Put these on and get out of the car with me. Zhong Lang was startled. What was this? Wearing this in the middle of the summer, there's no time to explain, this thing can save your life, Audra said very calmly, and then looked at the driver in front. Then he looked at the driver in front. Driver, after you drive the car to an open space, please go back first. Their target is us. As long as we leave, you'll be safe. Then what about Director Joie? The driver's heart trembled. In fact, he wasn't weak. If we work together, maybe, we won't succeed. They know our route like the back of their hand, and they definitely know how strong we are. For them to come looking for trouble so openly, it shows that they're very confident in their own strength. Speaking up to this point, Audra grinned. Don't worry, I have a way. For Audra, the most important thing now was to ensure the safety of the people's property. As long as the driver drove the car to an open space, they could minimize damage as much as possible. Secondly, the safety of Zhong Lang and this driver was equally important. As a leader, Audra felt that he had to take responsibility. As for his own safety, he also had to consider it. Thus, after giving Zhong Lang and the driver their instructions, he immediately took out his phone and sent a text message to his Shifu Wang Ling. The text message read, smiley face angle _ Shifu, help. Chapter 663. The demon hunter never thought that he would actually be looked down upon by two stupid golden core cultivators. They were clearly two things that he could crush to death with just a little bit of strength, yet they actually dared to provoke him in front of his face. Elder Yin Jiping, Elder Ji Xing's order is to bring them back. Don't worry, I know that. I won't kill them. The gloomy young man narrowed his eyes at Audra. But I have to teach them a lesson first. Since Elder Ji Xing wants them alive, I'll make them half dead first. This demon hunter called Yin Jiping waved his hand and shouted softly, Little Rongnu. Then, a snaking bayonet with 9 bends turned into a stream of black light and appeared in his hand. Seeing this, the driver of the van cursed inwardly. Because this magic weapon was none other than Elder Yin Jiping's life-bonded magic weapon. This was a 9 zigzag bayonet that had harvested the lives of countless people. Because of its special engineering design, once the bayonet pierced the body, it would directly destroy the body's 8 extraordinary meridians and instantly paralyze the nerves. What was even more frightening was that the wounds caused by the bayonet would bleed continuously for a short period of time, and there was no way to stop it. Go! This demon hunter called Elder Yin merely raised his hand, and the snaking black bayonet immediately shot forward like a swimming dragon. In order to refine this bayonet, I slaughtered 88 Western dragon-like magic beasts called Rongnu dragons, and used their brains to refine it. The bayonet is covered in poison. Given your realms, you might be able to hold on for more than 10 minutes. This Elder Yin sneered. But you should rejoice. Because of Elder Ji Xing's order, I won't let you die so easily. He had controlled the poison on the bayonet, and before these two people were publicly executed tomorrow, they would be in unbearable pain from this poison, which would definitely be an experience more painful than death. For the confident party, this kind of abusing noobs often gave them a kind of sadistic pleasure. Back then, in order to refine this little Rongnu, and make it his life-bonded magic weapon, Elder Ian had paid a great price. To let these two foolish golden core cultivators die under his life treasure and let them feel the pain brought by the power of his life treasure, Elder Ian felt that this was the highest courtesy he could offer. It had to be said that little Rongnu's sudden thrust was extremely fast, and Audhua had to admit that given his current realm, there was no way he could withstand it. Therefore, the moment he saw Elder Ian take out the bayonet, he instantly used Zhonglang, who was wearing long johns, as a meat shield. Zhonglang, brother Zhua. Little Rongnu's might was truly formidable. The moment she pierced through, a powerful gust of wind howled like a dragon's roar. He could only say, as expected of little Rongnu, in the end, he is a golden core stage cultivator. He is really too naive. The moment Audhua used Zhonglang as a meat shield in front of him, this Elder Ian sneered in his heart. How could a mere golden core cultivator's body stand up to his little Rongnu's thrust? Pierce through them. Elder Ian Jeeping sneered. The next moment, little Rongnu closed in, but just as the tip of the bayonet was less than half an inch away from Zhonglang's body, a powerful golden light spread out from his body. At that moment, the power of the enchanted long johns burst forth once again. As expected, Shifu's long johns were still powerful. Audhua sighed in his heart, and at the same time, he felt a little nervous. Although he had already sent the text message, he didn't know whether Shifu had seen it or not. If Shifu hadn't seen it, it was still game over for him. As the meat shield, Zhonglang was even more astonished. He had never expected that the long johns, which he had worn inside out in a moment of desperation, would actually have such solid defensive power. What was the origin of this long johns? At the same time, Zhonglang was also deep in thought. In the outside world, there had always been rumors about Audhua. Many people speculated that he was being guided by an almighty who wasn't weaker than the 10 founding generals, but the identity of this almighty had always been a mystery. Could this almighty be the big shot who had made these long johns? While Zhonglang was lost in thought, Elder Ian Jeeping launched a second attack in disbelief. In the end, it was still the long johns that glowed with golden light that blocked little Rongnu's attack. This greatly astonished Elder Ian Jeeping. They were just 2 golden core cultivators, how could they have such powerful Daoist robes? At that moment, Audhua's heart was on the verge of collapse. Relying on the long johns now, he could barely stall for time, but it was clear that this wasn't a long-term solution, because in the end, there was only one set of enchanted long johns. But just as Audhua's heart was being tormented, in the next moment, he suddenly saw a streak of brown spiritual light flying toward him at an extremely fast speed. That was, Audhua's eyes instantly widened. On the other side, Elder Yin's expression was very unsightly. What on earth is that Daoist robe you're wearing? Elder Ian frowned deeply. He was annoyed that his attacks had failed twice in a row. He looked at Audhua with a crafty look in his eyes. But while this Daoist robe is strong, it seems like there's only one. Elder Ian was quick-witted enough to see through this situation. In the next moment, he adjusted his attack and aimed little Rongnu at Audhua, intending to start with him first. I'll get rid of you first, but to Elder Yin's surprise, it was as if this Director Zhua had suddenly taken the wrong medicine, as he directly pushed aside the meat shield in front of him and walked towards him step by step. That wasn't right. This momentum wasn't right. It shouldn't be like this. Vaguely, Elder Ian sensed that something wasn't right. Could it be that there was some kind of conspiracy here? He almost subconsciously took a step back, his heart full of questions. A few seconds ago, this golden core cultivator had clearly been hiding behind someone else. How could he suddenly become a different person? Do you have some life-saving magic treasure on you that you haven't used yet? At that moment, Elder Ian was extremely cautious as he stared at Audjwa. I've already used it. About 5 or 6 minutes ago, I sent a 10-cent text message. Audjwa stared at him and smiled. Asking for help. Elder Yin's face instantly darkened. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have asked for help so quickly, but at that moment, Audjwa suddenly stretched out his hand and roared at the sky. Sword, come. Following that, Elder Ing saw a brown spiritual light descending from the sky. However, this spirit light didn't turn into a spirit sword in his palm, but turned into a film of light which attached itself to Audjwa's body. Where's your sword? Chapter 664. The brown spirit light attached itself to Audjwa's body, and even his pupils were dyed the color of this spirit light. His aura almost instantly changed, and his subtle breathing gave off a heavy sense of oppression. Elder Ian Jeeping couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. That brown spirit light just now had been too fast, and even with his dynamic vision, he had only been able to see a blurry trajectory. Although he couldn't be completely sure, Elder Ian Jeeping still saw that it seemed like a sword had turned into a ray of light and attached itself to this director's body. One with the sword, Elder Ian Jeeping had to admit that he had never seen a sword spirit directly attach itself to a body before in all his life of cultivation. Furthermore, Elder Ian Jeeping felt that it was extremely unscientific, because under normal circumstances, the condition for the unity of man and sword to be achieved was that the compatibility between the spirit sword and its master had to reach a certain peak before such a fusion method could be realized. But the problem was that given the current situation, it was very obvious that the spirit sword which had just flown down from the sky clearly didn't belong to this director Zhua. Even so, it was still possible to fuse with him. What on earth was this sword's origin? Elder Ian Jeeping subconsciously retreated, feeling that the situation in front of him had completely reversed. The driver in the van had also already sensed that the situation wasn't good, but when he wanted to drive back, he realized that all 4 of the van's tires had burst. When had they burst? They hadn't noticed it at all. When they came back to their senses, they remembered that when the sword light had attached itself to Audjwa's body just now, their minds had gone blank because of their spiritual fright. They had actually been so scared that they had blacked out. Elder Ian grit his teeth and furrowed his brow. At the moment, there was already no way out, they could only fight. Furthermore, Elder Ian had always felt that he still had a chance of winning. Although this director Zhuo was currently one with his sword, it couldn't fundamentally change the strength of his body. As long as Elder Ian pierced little Rongnu's skin a little and a powerful poison seeped into this director Zhuo's body, even the sword spirit that had attached itself to him wouldn't be able to do anything about it, right? It had to be said that Elder Yin's plan was indeed very good, but it was a pity that in the end, he had been too naive. He hadn't expected at all what kind of player the sword spirit standing in front of him was. There were many situations that couldn't be judged by common sense. No matter who you are, you can no longer stop my Demon Hunters Association's grand plan. Elder Ian Jeeping's expression darkened as he chose to strike first. He manipulated little Rongnu to turn into a stream of light and swiftly thrust it at Audjwa's chest. But before this light could get close, Elder Ian Jeeping saw Director Zhua, who was possessed by the sword spirit, calmly stretch out an index finger to hold little Rongnu against his body. Jinka's first impression of little Rongnu's sudden thrust was, so weak. It was so weak that Jinka couldn't find any adjectives to describe it. This was a far cry from when he had possessed grenade-throwing senior immortal's body and fought evil sword god back then. At the very least, evil sword god's attack had tickled Jinka a little, but it could be said that this kind of attack didn't have any lethality at all. It could even be said to be completely useless. Even if it was an egg hitting a rock, it should at least cause some egg splashes. Impossible. Elder Ian Jeeping screamed in his heart. There was no way a golden core cultivator could withstand this kind of attack with his physical strength. Of course, there was another explanation, and that was that it wasn't Little Rongnu's body that had blocked Little Rongnu's thrust, but the protective sword chi around Director Joie. So that was it. After discovering this secret, Elder Jeeping smiled sinisterly in his heart. Jinka, who was attached to Odd Joie, maintained an expressionless expression from beginning to end. He felt that this little sword spirit was still a little too young, and had no idea at all how poisonous his Little Rongnu was. Brother Sword Spirit, if you think you can defend against my Little Rongnu's poison with sword chi alone, then you're really too naive. Back then, in order to create this highly poisonous killing weapon, I slaughtered 88 female Rongnu dragons and extracted their poisonous blood essence to refine it. Elder Jeeping sneered. The spells he cultivated were famous for being insidious. Even back then, in order to refine this Little Rongnu into his life-bonded magic treasure, he had constantly modified his own body. Elder Jeeping hadn't planned to use this move at first, but in the face of this protective sword chi that couldn't break through his defenses, he had no choice but to use this hidden trick. He took off his clothes from the upper half of his body and bared his arms. Then, Jinka, who was attached to Odd Joie's body, saw that this Elder Yin's arms were actually covered in pitch-black patterns, like a zebra. Then, Jinka saw Elder Jeeping chant in a low voice, and the pattern instantly started to spin, forming a spiral force that condensed in his hands. At that moment, Elder Yin's hands had turned completely pitch-black, and a highly toxic poison had condensed. Furthermore, this poison even affected the air around them, and even the air itself was filled with a strong toxicity. To use this move, Elder had to completely conceal his breath, and it wouldn't work even if he used the turtle breathing spell to fight. In order not to affect his thinking in battle, Elder had even been very quick-witted back then to control the poison in his arms so that it wouldn't flow to other organs in his body and cause irreversible damage. So in theory, Elder was a semi-poisonous person. At that moment, Elder grit his teeth, gripped the hilt of Little Rongnu's knife, and then transferred all the poison that had accumulated in his arms to Little Rongnu's body. The already pitch-black bayonet now had a black poisonous chi lingering around it, which made it look even more terrifying. Jinka sensed it a little. Since the sword spirit wasn't strong enough, this poisonous chi could indeed seep into the sword chi. But, Jinka dropped his forehead into his hand, feeling a headache coming on. He had thought that this Elder would come up with some eye-catching move, but in the end, it was still so useless. First, get rid of this scum. Jinka raised his hand, and was about to make a move. Holding the poison-enhanced Little Rongnu in his hand, Elder sneered. Even gods and ghosts can't resist this Little Rongnu's poison. I don't believe I can't poison you to death. Who knew if it was out of habit, but before Elder made his move, he licked Little Rongnu's body with his tongue. Jinka, a few seconds later, Elder Yin's face turned deathly white, and he frothed at the mouth as he fell to the ground dead. Chapter 665. News of Elder Yin's death very quickly reached the military tent where Elder Ji Xing was. Everyone in the Demon Hunters Association had a soul mark on them, which would immediately disappear as soon as their death was confirmed. Elder Ji Xing was no exception. When Elder Zhuo Wu had died earlier, President Bai hadn't even confirmed it before directly turning around and leaving precisely because he had clearly sensed that the soul mark had already disappeared. But the soul mark wasn't permanent, it was a one-time mark. Neither President Bai nor Elder Ji Xing had expected Elder Zhuo Wu to come back to life on the spot. The soul suppression ring couldn't just reconstruct the body, it could also perfectly repair the soul, which was equivalent to remaking Elder Zhuo Wu's soul. Thus, when Elder Zhuo Wu came back to life, the soul mark in his body also disappeared. After a night of recuperation, Elder Ji Xing's nausea eased a little, but the moment he saw Elder Yin's soul mark disappear, he instantly felt that discomfort in his body rise again. How could this be? Elder Ji Xing grit his teeth. He hadn't expected Elder Ian to actually die just like that. In order to capture Zhuo before the operation, the Demon Hunters Association had long since investigated Director Zhuo's route to work to ensure that they would strike when the other party's defenses were at their weakest. Elder Ian had always been a decisive person, and coupled with Little Rongnu's swift and violent attacks, taking down 2 golden core cultivators should have been as easy as snapping a finger. But in the end, Elder Ian had still died. This operation to capture Zhuo this time was just an impromptu act after the plan had been delayed. Because of what had happened to Elder Ji Xing last night, the plan had been delayed by a day. Thus, Elder Ji Xing had added another line to his vicious revenge plan. He had decided to capture all the people who had offended the Demon Hunters Association and bring them to number 60 high school, and then publicly execute them when the revenge plan unfolded the next day. Unfortunately, they had gotten off to a bad start, and Elder Ian, whom they had sent out first, had inexplicably died first. "Soniko, what should we do now?" asked the man called Zhu on the side. "Send someone to retrieve Elder Yin's body. I want Yaran to do it." At the mention of Yaran's name, Elder Ji Xing's stomach felt a little uncomfortable. He did his best to calm down and then looked at Zhu. "How's Elder Poisonous Dragon doing?" "Elder Poisonous Dragon is very successful. He has already found the home of that great death-courting senior. He's just a soul formation cultivator. I believe Elder Poisonous Dragon will be able to resolve it soon." "Yes." Elder Ji Xing nodded. This Elder Poisonous Dragon was the best candidate they had specially chosen to deal with grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Little Silver. The reason why Elder Poisonous Dragon was sent was because of the silver-haired young man beside Great Death-Courting Senior in the villa. Based on their previous encounters and the information provided by Mo Immortal Castle, the silver-haired young man also had a very strong self-healing ability, so Elder Poisonous Dragon was definitely the most suitable candidate. Elder Poisonous Dragon's Poisonous Dragon Drill series of fish techniques had the effect of inflicting serious injuries, and could perfectly prevent recovery. Everyone from the Demon Hunters Association in the military tent was extremely confident in this. It was still July 24th on Monday in the 14th week of the semester. At the same time as Elder Yin's death, Little Silver and Grenade Throwing were enjoying a broccoli salad breakfast. The road to writing novels was a lot more difficult than Little Silver had imagined, so he didn't stop reading a lot of online novels during breakfast. As he nibbled on broccoli, he read Let Go of That Wet Nurse, which Father Wong had written previously. Little Silver had looked up a lot of writing guides online, and then realized that they basically didn't make much sense. The most important thing was still to practice. There were no shortcuts when it came to writing. True knowledge had always been gained through practice. Even if there were geniuses, there were very few of them. Take cultivation geniuses for example. How many people in the world could be as monstrous as Master? Therefore, people still had to have genuine ability and learning. Relying on swindling, cheating, and copying and pasting definitely wouldn't work. For example, there was a live streamer called Dean on a live streaming platform who used other people's voices to sing live, and even the songs he uploaded were copied and pasted from other singers before uploading them. He even insisted that they were his own. If you didn't want people to know about it, then don't do it. Without genuine talent, you wouldn't be able to pretend to be an elephant for long. Little Silver didn't know how the orphanage dean was doing now. He decided to do a search after breakfast to see if this live streamer was dead or not. As he ate breakfast, Little Silver also started to rethink his theme. Although Little Silver felt like a masterpiece of déjà vu for the opening chapter he had written yesterday, it still felt very conventional. So Little Silver simply deleted everything and gave up. There was a good saying, without destruction, there can be no construction. What are you thinking about? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found it a little funny to see Little Silver racking his brains. The previous theme didn't work. I'm thinking of a new one, Little Silver replied solemnly. How about I write a novel about collars? Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Little Silver, for example, the protagonist has an ancestral collar, which is connected to a chain. Whoever pulls on this chain will have their abilities copied by the collar. Then, the person who puts on the collar will get all the abilities stored in the collar. Furthermore, they can bestow the collar's abilities on other people. That's the legendary all-for-one. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, Little Silver, how about it? Say something, grenade-throwing. If it doesn't work, we can modify it again. If you don't think the collar setting is good enough, we can change it to a toilet seat. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, Little Silver, I've already thought of a name for the protagonist. Let's call it Silver Stalks Out of Time. But stalks. The corners of grenade-throwing senior immortal's mouth twitched. Silver. Silver stalks out of time. Silver is my surname, it also has a deep meaning. Silver stalks out of time refers to a time when the protagonist sat on the toilet for a very long time because of constipation. In the end, he accidentally squatted on the toilet for a very long time and became the person who used the toilet the longest in the world. From then on, the protagonist Silver Stalks Out of Time accidentally obtained the ability to copy the abilities of people who squat on the toilet at the same time. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.